Hey everyone, thanks for being here. My name is Garrett Krebs. I'm a property tax consultant at Altus Group, and I pretty acutely specialize in cutting assessed values for industrial properties in Dallas-Fort Worth. I've got a panel with me here, and they need no introduction, but nevertheless, we're going to go down the line one by one and let them introduce themselves. Starting with Bob.
Hi, I'm Bob Mohr with Mohr Capital. We are a investment development company. Family office is based here in Dallas. We do industrial development. I know we have about 5 million feet under construction. We have hotels, hospitality. We have a retail group that developing a project up in Tulsa. It's a REI anchored facility, 5 pad sites. It's just one of several. We do a number of ground leases and trade single tenant net lease facilities throughout the country.
Tim Veler with SVM Dealer Commercial here in Dallas. I'm the managing director and principal. We specialize in office and industrial leasing, investment sales, and tenant representation.
Matt Dornak with Screw Realty Partners, managing director there on our industrial team, leading basically our brokerage efforts, focusing leasing, tenant rep, development services.
I'm Graybill with Lead Associates, principal shareholder, been in the business about 25 years. Started as a real estate research nerd for Bob Mohr back in 1997. Unlike the rest of the group, I took the asymmetric route to get into commercial real estate brokerage. Love it. I'm a Pisces and I like long walks on the beach.
Well, I'm Gump. I'm with Colliers. I don't have any socks nearly as cool as Graybill's, but I do predominantly work with Altus and Yost and do predominantly industrial tenant.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to start off a little bit general here, and by the end of this, I know we're going to definitely have some concrete takeaways for y'all. But I'm going to throw this first one to Bob, and everyone's welcome to chime in. So, Bob, you mentioned you've got 5 million under construction right now. DFW is seeing a lot of construction with the work doing. And since you developed a park throughout the United States, how does DFW stack up against some of the other markets?
Yeah, DFW. For those of you that don't know, I think was the #1 city in the United States for development this past year and a half. They've battled Atlanta and a few others. They have right now, DFW has 78 million feet under construction. 22% of that, depending on which company you ask, 22 to 28% is already pre-leased. So we absorbed about half of that last year, which means we have about a 2-year supply that's being built. We've had great rent growth here, not like it is in out west or the Inland Empire or New Jersey, but we have a ton of people moving here, and we have no taxes and all the things you already know about. So I think we have done very well and sustained over the years. You know, we're an industry here. In some cities, real estate is an afterthought.
Beautiful. Yeah, piggybacking on what Bob said, the story here is we're leading the nation in construction, deliveries, and absorption. And the only question that comes up is this sustainable? And we are by far leading the rest of the country. Delivered last year, 49 million, like Bob said. We have under construction close to 80 million. At second place, Chicago last year was only 28.8. And under construction, Phoenix is second place at 51 million. So we're significantly far ahead. That doesn't include the unbelievable rent growth we've had here.
If you covered it. I got the opportunity to moderate this exact panel last year, and some of the same faces were on the panel as well. So it kind of gives us a unique opportunity not only to look at the market now, but look back at some of the things we talked about last year. And see if we were right or wrong, or how they compare to the state this year. So with that being said, my next question, I want to start with Matt, if anyone can chime in. So last year we talked about the warning signs of overbuilding, and I'm wondering, did we overbuild in 2022? Are we in danger of overbuilding now, moving forward?
Do you know what I said last year?
I think you said that we were not in danger of overbuilding.
Okay, good. Yeah, I would say last year, 2022, I wouldn't go as far to say that we overbuilt. We didn't, from the absorption levels, we were like 28 million square feet. We basically desperately needed more warehouse space last year. We're sitting at our lowest vacancy rate of 4.7% today. That's the lowest DFW has ever seen, so we still need product on the ground. Fast forward though to where we are today, we definitely, if you're just taking the headline for what it is, the stat that Bob just threw out at that 75 to 78 million square feet under construction today, you could definitely say we probably overstarted construction in 2022, which is going to impact the second half of this year. Most of that's going to be delivering mid-summer to basically through the end of 2023 this year. So if you break down those numbers, call it 75 million square feet, about 50 million of that has slab being poured today. So either a portion of the slab is poured or the building's near completion. Most of it though is a portion of the slab is poured and they're about to tilt walls. And so that will put that delivery date in the second half of the year. The other balance of that, the 25 million square feet, first just being moved today. So that piece is going to be delivered until tail end of this year. It moves really quickly, or beginning of 2024, so basically this time 24. So take all that into consideration. Are we overbuilding today? Again, I would say we are in danger of delivering too much product. We're probably going to deliver 50 million square feet. We're not going to absorb 50 million square feet. Our 10-year average is right at 23.5 for absorption. So if we were to continue with our 10-year historic averages, then that puts us right at that 2-year mark for what we're delivering. So the good news with all this is this year there's going to be very few new starts, and so when you start thinking about 2024 and going forward, if we continue with our absorption levels and the demand that we're seeing in the market, we could very well look out in 2025 and kind of be back where we were at the beginning of last year. So we've kind of done this wave again, as we always do at DFW. And then lastly, I think if you're just taking the blanket statement of we are in danger of overbuilding, you're probably not doing much in the market from a development standpoint. You're probably not even looking at sites. I would urge everyone that's digging into each of the sell markets and each of the product types. It's probably a smarter way of going about it, just given that there are soft spots still in the market, even though we're delivering this wide range of product. Most of it's very big product on the periphery, kind of looking in, and should have that big of an impact on the infill areas of the market.
I'm going to take all that and break it down into what my little brain can consume. And if you look historically over the last 15 years, we built 25, 30 million square foot and absorbed 22, 23 million. So last year was certainly a high watermark. To Matt's point though, if you look at, I think it's interesting because I think there are two narratives here. There's a tale of two cities and a tale of two cities in Fort Worth and Dallas. And then a tale of two different market segments for the occupant out there. In an interesting stat, I'll share some, I don't know anything, I just read a lot and borrow stuff from people. And a national REIT, here are some of their predictions, and this is kind of agnostic of DFW. U.S. warehouse development starts will drop to a 7-year low, even as rent growth increases by 10% nationally. California's barriers to development will permanently constrain logistics demand. Guess what? Allowing Texas to become the #1 state of net absorption moving forward. So no one really knows, and we in 2008, 2009, there was a ton of development right before the Great Recession. And at that time, I think there were 44 developers active in the market. I don't know how many there are now, but a quick counting, it's probably 80. So it's double that amount, more than that. You know, at that time, the market was 750, 800 million square feet. We're now a billion square foot market. So I think the fundamentals are good. I think we are maybe a little bit overbuilt, but you know, with your price of capital, the Fed's raised rates, the short-term borrowing rate, 400 basis points in a year. If you're going to get a construction loan, there's a 300 basis point spread, so you're at 7%, go build a building. That's, you know, the natural equilibrium or constraints of development are going to come into play here. The money's not ubiquitous, it costs more, but on the deal front, on the tail of two cities, Fort Worth has a ton of development, but if you look at Dallas, I mean, some of the infill markets are 3% vacant, 5% vacant. You know, Alliance was in 2010, coming out of the Great Recession, 11%, now it's 7%. So there's a need for development. It's just everyone focuses on the big box product over 500,000 square feet. 500,000 square foot demand is still very strong. But if you're in South Dallas, Forney, some of the other markets, and over 750,000 square feet, there's probably some concern. And I think some groups are going to get a little bit more creative. I mean, we've been driving 100 miles an hour. I was in an accident the other day. I was driving my big dually going down I-35 trying to get the hell out of town on Friday at 4 o'clock to make the Buc-ee's. I was going to buy diesel, beer, and deer corn, driving like a bad man. My truck was full of building supplies, pulling a trailer, and I look up, and I'm going 50 on 35, and I look up, the traffic stop. And what the Fed's trying to do is stop the momentum, but to keep us from getting in a wreck. And so there's a lot of natural constraints that are coming into play, unlike the Great Recession. I think that I'm very optimistic about the market. We are overbuilding, but guess what? The starts are going to drop. We're going to look up in 2024 and be out of space because the lead time to build is 24 months.
So we may not be overbuilt, but we may be overstarted. I like that. I'm not going to use that. Matt's one of my favorite developer guys, and you know, is doing mostly tenant rep. It reminds me of the old saying, Jesse knows it, we may not be overbuilt, but we're over, now it's overstarted, but it used to be over-announced. But now it's, yeah. And you know, it's the old saying, $1 borrowed is $1 earned, and $1 paid back is lost forever. And so that's generally speaking what you've seen is a lot of money looking for deals. And so yes, there was some overbuilding those. To follow up on Trey's point, I think he's exactly right. You know, it's a bifurcated market. It really is different whether you're talking about the big box or whether you're talking about the spaces 300 and under. And to put a finer point on it, there are probably, are we still saying 18 million square foot buildings in the marketplace, available properties. Some are under construction, some are not, some are completed. There's nowhere near that many deals in the market that are real, that are probably going to land anytime soon. So like that's the part that probably gets the headlines. But if you're a 300,000 and under tenant, and Matt may have a more of an exact number, but it is tight. It is, and there's always a deal. I was on the phone this morning with several guys, and you know, everything they've got deals working on. So it's an extremely active market under that 300,000 mark, but you get up over in the 500s. And I did do a little bit of a, there have been approximately, I'd say a dozen deals, 500,000 square feet and up, that have been done, maybe more, maybe a few more than that, maybe missing some, that have been done since the first of the year. Interestingly enough, they're all pretty much in the 10-year, 10 years is pretty much the norm. There's 1 3-year and some 7 years, but these deals are, they're very long term. They typically have extremely high tenant finish, which is one of the reasons why a lot of these deals have gotten longer. But you know, that's just to me, again, it's just a function of whether you're talking about a smaller deal, 300 under, whether you're talking about 500 and up, as far as whether we are truly overbuilt or not. But
one more thing on that, to follow up what Alan just said, on the space that is nearing completion. So today, we don't have a single building that is under construction that doesn't have some activity on it, balance point. And we wish that some of the product was on the ground delivered today. And that's the biggest issue that we're seeing in the market. I think we'll talk about the need here in a second, but all this is just being pushed out. And so it's kind of unfortunate when all these starts occurred last year, because everything's delivering, kind of feels like it's the same exact time. Whereas if we had buildings on the ground today, I think we'd be seeing those leases signed.
I just had just one last point, and the under construction, that is the most misquoted number, I think. 80 million, 83 million, whatever, we've even got it on our docs. A lot of that comes out of Coast Guard, no offense, but leasing agents are not always completely honest. I know this is a shock, no sharp objects near your, junkyard. But when they call and ask them, are you under construction, they say yes. And so then they go out and they move dirt around a little bit and say it's under construction. There are a lot of buildings, so I would say our research guy has really put a fine point on this and said that the true under construction number is under 70. It's probably more closer to 68, maybe even as low as 63 million. So I don't think the 80 million that you hear bandied about is really accurate, because a lot of that is just dirt where they move some dirt around and they're calling it under construction, but in reality, they're not building anything, not until we get further down the road and the markets turn right side up.
Yeah, all I've seen is Matt said overstated. I wrote that down. I wrote quote overstarted down on my notes. It's really good. So we've seen a pencils down situation as a result of the overstarting of last year, and we kind of did just cover it, so I might skip this and switch to demand. Let's get to demand. So in our meeting last year, we talked about kind of a short-lived trend, and Alan, you brought this up in our meeting leading up to this about tenants being turned down because the owners and the builders wanted to wait closer to the close of construction, thinking that the rate would go up. And I know you have a strong feeling about that, so you want to talk about that?
Yeah, that was a moment in time, really. We're not seeing that now, Matt. I don't know if you are or Mark, Tim, but there was a time there where.
Not with good quality tenants.
What's that?
Not with good quality tenants, no.
Yeah, there was a time there where you had a lease that was 6 months out. They really didn't want to sign a lease with you because they wanted to see if the rates were going to be any higher, closer to the end of construction. It was a little bit crazy. But that just goes to show you how fever pitch things got.
I think that on the tenant side, there's a lot of activity. When a decision maker, a business owner, executive, whatever, your customer on the occupier side sees uncertainty, you just give them a reason to pause. I remember who remembers Obamacare 2010, 2012, I was added to the list of reasons why. Good, bad, or indifferent, I don't care about your political affiliation, but hiring stopped. Because they didn't know what executives were going to do. They didn't know what their bottom line cost would be. So what we've created is that natural bid-ask delta. Things are going to slow down. We've been going 100 miles an hour feverishly for the last 3 years. It's not normal. So we're going to go back to the speed limit, drive 75, and deals are going to take a little longer. Instead of sending your client an executable lease and say, hey, it's a competitive situation, you have 3 days to sign it, good luck, you better not have a lot of lease comments. Maybe now it's going to be a 30 or 60-day process. I'd also say, you're going to see some concessions come back to the market on larger deals. We're running a transaction right now north of the airport. And, you know, a must-take is where your client would commit to 400,000 square feet. Hey, landlord, you've got 700. I'll take the whole building, only charge me on 400. I'll pay for the rest 6 to 8 months down the road. That hasn't existed in any meaningful way in the last 2 to 3 years. Would you agree?
Yeah, the only time I say it is maybe.
Right. And so I sent out proposals, and a couple groups didn't get them. It was a 400. I said, I think you ought to propose, send us an unsolicited. We got 2 groups that responded on 400 with a must take for 8 to 10 months to take 650. So you're seeing creativity come back. You have folks that have a memory that have been doing this, were gainfully employed prior to 2010, have seen a recession or two. They know the song and dance. They can pivot and make deals. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I completely agree with all that. I think owners, for the most part, are just way more flexible today than they were a year ago. You didn't have to be flexible at all. You had a line of tenants, you know, jumping to sign a lease document, which we didn't receive before. And today, I can tell you, it feels like every other day, an owner opens up the idea of selling their building, you know, to a user, which that was 6 months ago, they would say, no way, we're not sellers, we're not even considering it. Now they're saying, you know, citizen offer, we might consider. So there's a lot more flexibility there.
To add to that, I just wrapped up a little deal as a survey is pursued, not a deal yet, to purchase 125,000 square feet. They want to be in a Class A building, ESFR, all the bells and whistles. If you went out to market in the last 2 years and asked owners, would you sell, make offer, maybe, no, put 8 properties on the list. I reached out, and some of those groups said, yeah, we talked to our owner and actually put it on the list. I got a text today. All of them gave me pricing guidance. It's an unsolicited offer, but yeah, we would sell, and guess what? You need to be here or here. Now, obviously, if they have a tenant that comes along, they'll lease it for 10 years. That's going to be their preference. It's where they make their money. But different environment, much more flexibility to that.
All right, I want to hear from Bob a little bit. Bob, can you talk specifically about rental rates in specific DFW submarkets?
No.
I can talk generally.
I'll answer. In general, and he'll get specific, Tim, so I can talk to you. Rents in Dallas have been averaging $550 or so in that ballpark. And we're talking about all this growth in listing, and I know it's slowing down a little bit, but yeah, we're so lucky that there are a few barriers to entry. We have, you know, right now in Chico, California, a client that did not get their lease, did not put a renewal option in their lease, and their rent proposal has gone up 5 times. 5 times. And in those markets, you're seeing, so I'm just comparing it, and I'll flip it to Tim, those markets you're seeing $15 a foot. In New Jersey, we just transaction were paid on a transaction that was at $15.50 a foot on a renewal. Now, when you compare that to Dallas, where we're running $4.50 to $6, and Mark, you were just talking about one, it was a 100,000 foot deal, was probably about $8.90 a foot. That might have been more tech. But that gives you an idea of where we are in the market, which makes us so competitive from a distribution standpoint. I'll let Tim get into the specifics.
Yeah, so I'm talking generally, because back in Q1 2020, this is a market average, to keep it simple for understanding, about $5 a foot. That's across the market for industrial. Now we're over $738. And if you break that down, big boxes, which are lower, to the small stuff, in a moment, we're going to talk about who's moving in, who's moving out. I'll talk about some of the small stuff that you can't find. Tenants under 25,000 feet that need that kind of space, you know, good luck. Rents are upwards of 12, 15, 20 bucks a foot, even in submarkets surrounding Dallas right now, because some of those folks are getting pushed. So if you look at the growth, just simply from Q1 2020 to right, around $5 a foot, low fives, to right now at $738 across the market. That explains a lot for us keeping up with the cost of capital, which I believe we're going to talk about capital going up too, because that's a factor. It doesn't factor into typical market cycles. We're leading the nation. We've never been to this place in Texas history, ever. We're leading in construction, absorption, people moving in, and the projections are crazy, and then our rates are going up on top of it. I don't have it micromanaged to the point I can tell you how much our increased rates have funneled into our little bit of increased vacancy, but our vacancy right now is still nothing to be ashamed of, even though it drifted higher, it spiked. It's still at an all-time, if you average it out over the last 10 years, we're still not that far off of where we've been. I think it's more normalizing now.
Well, let's hop right into that. You know, Bob, what's the cost of capital now compared to this time last year, and how does it affect the tenant?
That's a tough question, I guess. You know, everything was going along, so you said the Fed pulled it back, everybody knows about it, you can watch it on TV. A recent, we have an ongoing banking relationship. About a year ago, we were doing a total, our rate was $4.4% total. Today it's 7.6% with that same bank. So 3% may not sound like a lot, almost 75% increase, huge for a development property. The typical developer is going to develop something, hope to get a 2 times multiple on total project cost. Now they're looking at maybe 50% if they can get it leased and done. That's the only downside for the developers, the 80 developers that have you, is we're probably going to see a little slowdown in rent growth. The average rent growth throughout the United States is supposed to be about 8% next year. The REIT he was talking about was Prologis. They estimate 60% reduction in construction starts throughout the United States. So hopefully that will have some slight benefit, but the cost of capital is huge. That's if you can get a bank to talk to you.
And then you alluded to this too, tenants are moving in and out in DFW right now.
Tenants moving in and out. One thing we did see a spike in was the grocery-related businesses, from HEB to Target to Walmart, the big ones they have down in Lancaster. And the consumer demand has strongly influenced that, and we've been very fortunate. We're the crossroads of the U.S., we're centrally located. We've got everything you can imagine that you need here for logistics, from rail to good, well, I don't want to go too much on power, but that new company even picked Texas, what is it, Riot Crypto, where they're going to be down in Corsicana doing like 400 and some megawatts of power, which is kind of crazy. So the people that are moving in, a lot of folks moving in because we're just a great place to be, will continue to be. Who's moving out? In the last panel, I said some of the mom and pops moved. Let me clarify that this time. They're not really moving out, they're having to change how they do business, or adjust, or move locations. Because it is getting significantly, the spike on smaller space is done just that, the spike.
Yeah, I'd add to that, manufacturing is definitely big, right? We're seeing significantly more manufacturers in the market right now. A lot of them are looking for land, which is pretty interesting. It's something that we haven't seen in a while, and that's definitely a big growth sector, needing heavy utilities, et cetera. But then you still have the large DCs. E-commerce is still increasing for a lot of these companies that Tim's speaking of that we're not, the big gorilla in the room, and so they're still catching up to a lot of the large competitors. So it's still a pretty diverse market when you look at demand. Also, the housing side, obviously, the population growth has continued. Probably housing starts have also clearly had a hit, but we're still serving this population base in North Texas, which is approaching 8 million people. So that's still a big factor from basically all tenants tied to that housing industry.
So to prepare for this esteemed panel and speak, I did an official survey. I had my team of 20 researchers making calls and collecting data. And so some of the feedback I got on the occupier side businesses, Texas is the beneficiary of the coastal markets. The cost of living, well, it's not as competitive in Texas, it's getting expensive, but it's still cheaper to be here than in California or on the left or right coast. And I was talking to one group, it was an occupier, I sold them a building in 2014 for a manufacturing facility. We caught up this morning. I said, what's your big prognosis? What do you see happening? And I'm gonna pick on California a little bit. He said that California is introducing legislation to essentially ban diesel engines. And the larger heavy-duty trucks have solutions, you know, electrification, but think about all these contractor vehicles you see going up and down the highway, the F-250s, the F-350s, there's not a solution for that. The second thing he mentioned is that California is introducing essentially an exit tax on your wealth created if you relocate out of the state in 2024. So, I mean, I kind of like it. It's a double-edged sword. We're glad to have your money. We're glad for you to move here. It helps all of us make money. It helps the people in the room. It's obviously changing our social fabric. Obviously, congestion is getting worse, but we still see companies moving here. And, did a little study back from, I don't know, what was it, 2015 to 2020. You've heard the stat, there were 300 people moving here a day for the last 5 years. I mean, we have a lot of job creation. We have home affordability. Folks want to come here. So it's a lot of, it used to be you're moving a client around or a tenant around the market. They're going from 30,000 to 100,000 or whatever. You have a lot of corporate moves moving here. E-commerce is part of that. Our lower cost is part of that. Manufacturers want to be here. You have reshoring. Another stat, Prologis' talking point, is that expect to see a lot more development and demand in Mexico due to U.S. reshoring to North America because of what we learned about a supply chain, how weak it is during COVID. So demand is strong. I think it will continue to be strong. I think we're going to have to be a little bit more selective about how we execute deals and the time associated with it. And I think things are going to be good.
Looking at the list of deals that have been done, over 500 in the last year, a lot of the names are logistics companies, and I don't know what the percentage is that leases, that sign leases. You guys, one of y'all,
40% nationally.
40%.
3PLs in their downline business is 40% of them.
Yeah. So the reality is, a lot of these deals that are done, we don't really know who the customer is that's going in that building. Most of these logistics firms are leasing buildings for a single tenant. There are some cases where they'll lease a building and have multiple tenants, multiple customers in their space, but I'd say a good majority of these, Hayes, for example, I believe that's Walmart. You've got ITS Logistics, Unis Logistics, Ryder, Penske Logistics. So a lot of these companies, where the logistics company signs the lease, the customer may or may not be a known entity. There are also a lot of cases in here where you can have the company sign the lease, but they still have a third-party logistics firm operating the warehouse. So until you dive into and get more information, you really don't always know who it is, because the 3PL is just handling, is leasing the building on behalf of one of their customers.
And because of that, as a leasing agent, you don't like 3PLs because you get 6 inquiries for the same customer sometimes, and you really never know who it is. So, no, we like them all.
Definitely makes it tough to track demand.
Yeah, and when you talk about sites, a lot of the things on the market reports, we don't know if they're all coming to Dallas. So when you say deals working, because if we have people moving here, we don't necessarily know that they've down selected Dallas as their final destination. So that's another thing to keep in mind. The other point I wanted to clarification to Alan earlier, when he said that some of the folks are showing things that are listed that they're under construction. I will say, as an example, I just thought of it, that yesterday we were finalized to be selected as one of the 3 for a 1.2 billion square foot build-to-suit. But just finalized, top 3. So what we did is the same thing Alan was suggested is we spent about $35,000 to have some trucks get out there, grade the site, put orange lines, keeping the dirt in line. But we did all that you said, and but we didn't put it out on the market that it's for construction. So we're doing everything you just said. I don't know if anybody understood that, but I guess we did.
Just to give perspective on the growth, over the past 10 years, we've had 1.2 million move-in in the last decade in DFW. We had 4 million everywhere else in Texas. To put that in perspective, the last 10 years, we've absorbed the entire population of the state of Oklahoma. And if anyone thinks that's going to slow down, that's really the story there. With where are we going, with people moving in here and market demand. Mark already talked about the price of housing as you get closer to the places people want to live and thrive. Further out, you can still get cheap stuff here in Texas, or you can get really bougie stuff. Bougie is the word I got from my kids, so. Yeah.
I was going to add to that, date myself again. 2000, the population of DFW, the 12 county conglomerate area was about 4.5, 4.6 million. What was the number? 8.5 million now. By 2030, we're projected to get close to 9.5, 10 million. In 2010, the stock of available industrial real estate was about 600 million. We're $1 billion. We've eclipsed Chicago. It's unbelievable. Rates. I'm going to go back to rates real quick. I like to date girlfriends that are not pretty. And what I mean by that, I have a lot of them, but I did. I had space on Exchange Drive with a client, still do, the roughest street in GSW. And it was formerly Prologis, sold several times since. I've worked on it for about 12 years. And when I took it over, the rates were $234 a foot. And in 2012, we had 3 buildings, and basically the north side of the street was all vacant, all rolling within 6 months. So I had about 400,000 square foot of multi-tenant buildings on the toughest space with the worst truck court on the worst street. And so I came up with this idea. I went to the owner, I said, let's introduce 99 cents a foot on comparative 350 buildings at the time. 99 cents a foot for the first year of a 5-year deal. Build it all up. I've since renewed every one of those tenants, so I've got one working at $5.95 a foot. So rates have doubled in 10 years in the market. So you talk about rent growth and where we are, talk about the population, talk about the building, talk about the people moving here. Dallas was not a mature market 10 years ago. It is now competing with the coastal markets. We are seeing people move here. When I started in 1997, Dallas-Fort Worth, if you look at the industrial statistics of any nationally published study by the real estate groups, we were a top 13 or 14 market. Where are we now? Top 3. And we're an inland port. Thank you, Tim Veler.
One other thing on rates, just to say it a little differently for newer construction. So if you pretty girlfriends. If you deliver product basically for tenants, attracting 20,000 square feet to 400,000 square feet 2 years ago, so in early 2021, if you're delivering then, today, all those leases you signed are at least $2 below market. And that's pretty much across the entire board within that size range. In some cases, a lot more than that. So we're gonna.
I'm going off course. I'm a left-handed person, so I'm a contrarian. I don't follow rules very well. We have questions here.
Hold your paper, please.
That's all right. So let's talk about that. Well, I mean, sublease space is kind of coming up. It's item number 8. Safety stock. where are we? You talked about where are you going at some of the rates below market, where we're doing, folks. I mean, the renewals I worked on the last 3 or 4 years with the in-place contractual rent that was in place for 5 to 7 years, we've seen rates almost double, right? Okay, then you talk about space on the market. There was something, I'm not gonna name who it was, but there was a bit of press that the Dallas-Fort Worth sublease market, so this is surplus space, occupiers have contractual rent, they wanna give either their entire premises up, or they're gonna market it to vacate, or a part of it. And the press bit was Dallas-Fort Worth industrial sublease space is up 130%. Okay, let's talk about that. You've got a 450 in South Dallas. Has it been on the market a while? Has it been on the market for a long period of time? A month. Is it the entire space or just, okay, in activity?
A lot of phone calls, but no real deals yet.
Okay, so,
We're probably $1 a foot below the market.
okay, there you go. So I just did a survey, and we've got a listing in GSW, Arlington, Grand Prairie, it's 300,000 square foot, not the easiest building, second generation. We went from $620 a foot at the end of the year, just raised it $660 a foot, now we're at $680 a foot because we're looking at the competitive set. There's a 320,000 square foot building in Great Southwest, you know, brand new, it was brand new when it was leased, it's 5 years old, it has 7 years of term left. They're quoting $475 a foot. So you can go lease Class A space below market by $1 to $2 a foot relative to where construction costs and new quotes are, $475 a foot or $750 a foot. And those subleases have term left. I mean, most of the deals you mentioned, Alan, the construction costs are such that tenants can't really go move at least do a 3-year commitment. Most of them are going to be 5, and a lot of them are 7 to 10 years of term left. So you go sublease a space, $475 a foot, and you've got 7 years of term. That's a hell of a deal. And guess what? It was on the market 60 days. It's already in subleases. Amazon put 190,000 square foot, highly specialized building in Great Southwest. It was on the market 1 week, and it's already leased for $950 a foot with 8 years of term remaining. So there's opportunity out there. Space may come back, but it actually has term, it's actually leasable, the sublease will compete with a newer product, but they're value options relative to today's cost.
Appreciate it. You know, I have one more question left, but we have like 5-ish minutes left. I would pay the entire price of this ticket just to get a copy of Tim and Bob's notes. So if there's any notes you guys have left before I jump into this last one that you want to share with folks.
The only thing I would maybe share is that we're seeing a lot of property construction companies, the big groups, we're seeing quite a bit of new build-to-suit activity. Some of it is related to things coming in or kind of onshoring from Europe and overseas. So they're kind of just now working on their supply chain or getting serious about it. So that seems to be the level of that, and be looking for those. So that might be a point of opportunity for you guys.
Just if you have any notes that we didn't get that you want to share with us today.
Any notes we didn't get to. Texas is open for business. Texas is it's going to continue to be a great place. If there's a national downturn, something we saw, we've gotten soft landings the last couple of cycle blips because we are easier to get along with. In many respects, we talked about we are an inland port. Well, if you're not getting the triple Freeport tax exemptions, you'd like one, well, call most people on this panel. They can help you get squared away maybe to a different location. And that's relatively easy to do. The more people are getting squeezed in other places, the more they learn how great and how business friendly Texas is. I see that only as a formula for success. There's a reason we're in an unprecedented time. Things are going unprecedentedly well here in Texas. And all has to do with, quite frankly, most of you in this room. This is a room full of high-level influencers and entrepreneurs that problem solve, we get things done, and we have the ability and flexibility here in Texas to do that.
add, and we also, if you take the California example, somebody said earlier about they have moratoriums now on, you can't really get sanctioned or approved for building new industrial. And we were talking about how they banned, I think they banned about everything. But the big thing is to take the checkbook at the end of the year after pay taxes, we pay 0. In California, it's 13.3%. So that ought to tell you why they're coming to Arizona and places like Dallas.
One addition, but real quick, with all the capital out there in the market that wants to be placed now, we're seeing a easing of that, and that has to be placed. What better place in the United States than to invest here? That's all I was
I was gonna say, the last thing I wanna say is just when we see vacancies spike and hit possibly an all-time high, it's gonna probably, our 10-year average is 6.4%. Just look at that. So we're probably
spiked in 2020 to 7.
And
5.3 there.
Yeah, and we're probably gonna shoot past that pretty quickly in Q4, but I would just say don't panic.
So 10-year vacancy, what was the number you just said?
6.4.
6.4. 2008, 2009, going to 2009, 2010, the vacancy rate for industrial was between 12 and 14%. We're gonna be fine. I mean, I think some folks just, it's all relative, right? And, going back to the auto accident, the Fed's trying to slow it down so we don't run into the car in front of us. That's a soft landing. Now, if we total the vehicle and we crash our economy, we have things to worry about. The Fed's trying to basically has 2 mandates: keep unemployment low and keep inflation in check. They're both out of whack. They're doing what they should be doing. In 2008, we drove the Porsche off the cliff. We broke due to greed and some interesting things going on, we broke our capital system. This is going to be a supply-demand, natural constraint downturn. It will happen. We'll have a quarter or two of negative GDP, and hopefully we just bump the car in front of us. That was a 2019 Toyota Camry that I ran into. It was a great insurance claim, and we don't want to total it. So things are going to be fine. We just got to, and then for us, I mean, number one, be blessed here in Texas. For us, we're happy to be in industrial real estate versus office, retail, hospitality. And, the unemployment rate needs to go up to 4 to 6%. We need a good old recession. Some people that are working remotely from home need to go back to work. Some people need to get laid off. Eggs need to come down. The price of beef needs to come down, and we'll be fine.
I was cheering. I also remember back in 2008, your beloved GSD based on West market was about 27% vacant in that neighborhood. So it was a lot worse. I do think, to one of the points earlier, there's going to be a lot of opportunities in this market and subleases. You have a lot of deals that were done that maybe were not some of the greatest credit deals, and so you are seeing some of that now come back. Or I would predict later in the year you're going to see some space come back from tenants that aren't able to withstand. But we do typically get, I'd say Texas fairly often isn't necessarily in line with the national economy, and we'll typically stay fine even if the national economy is melting a little bit. We typically are going to be, and a lot of that does have to do with cost of oil. Last point I'll make is, I know a lot of people in the room are with various cities around the Metroplex. And, the land, we haven't really talked about the land market, but the land market got insane for a while. We were hearing sites going in the 20s a foot, mid-20s per square foot. If you've got owners, and I know that's a frustration many of y'all have, is you've got owners that think that we're still in a $25 per foot industrial land market, you can let them know, tell them to call Trey and he'll set them straight. That market has come down and you're just not going to see that kind of activity for a while. And so hopefully they'll get the memo, but market is, you should have seen, what, 25% down from the crazy, time last year. I don't know what your percentage you put on it, but we were involved in a couple of those sales, I don't know, Matt was involved, but I think the land market, tell your owners that the land market's getting down. It just, actually, I'm not sure that it matters because you can't build without the equity and debt anyway, but, anyway, that's all.
But if you do have some of those sites in your cities, please, it's Bob at moorcap.com. Bob at moorcap.com. So I know we're gonna wrap it up, and I gotta say for all those people that are online, everybody here is really well, because I didn't see any plates that food left on. I'm hungry.
All right, well, that's our time. I want to wrap it up just by expressing my gratitude, and I think I speak for everybody. Just thankful to be here, thankful for a beautiful day, and on to panel 2.
So I'm Johnny Dunn. I'm at CBRE, and I run the private capital investment sales for industrial for them. So I focus on investment sales between about 2 and 40 million. I wanted to turn it over to these guys, let everybody introduce themselves, what communities they represent, and then just something a little bit interesting about your community, some interesting news or a differentiating factor, something like that. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter Tokar. I'm the president of the McKinney Economic Development Corporation. We wonderful to meet you. And little fun fact about our community, you may have read in the paper that we are in the process of taking a voter referendum for a commercial passenger terminal at the International Airport. It's very exciting for the city. That will happen in May. So we will be looking forward to hopefully lights coming out of the city. Assuming that launch, so what does that mean for the city? That is going to open up the entire east side of our city, which has a lot of available greenfield land right now for a whole new world of industrial uses, airport service operations, all sorts of things. So we're really excited about that proposition. We're excited about all the industrial prospects that have happened on the east side of McKinney in the last 4.5 years that I've been with the EDC. We delivered about 6 million square feet over there, and we have about 4 million under works right now from spec or from the project-driven projects. But hopefully in the coming months we'll have some big news about flight operations and what that's going to mean for the city.
I'm Guy Brown. I'm the EDC director in Hutchins. We hear a lot about the DFW import. So Union Pacific has an intermodal rail yard that's both in Wilmer and Hutchins. Those are 2 different cities. I know they get conflated, but I see our friends from Mohr, they're back there in the back. So the Union Pacific is a 400-acre intermodal, and we bring in freight from the Port of Long Beach and the Port of Los Angeles. So we act like a port. Things go, let's say, from Taiwan or Singapore. They get put onto a freighter. They go to the Port of Los Angeles, and then they come into Hutchins on rail. In fact, we have a rail spur system where we can deliver rail to buildings. And so that's our little special sauce. That's what separates us from everywhere else.
Good afternoon, everybody. Carl Stevens from City of Lancaster.
Sorry. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Carl Stevens with City of Lancaster. I'm the Research and Business Development Manager there with the People and Economic Development staff. We are adjacent to Wilmer and Hutchins and Inland Port. We have about 2,500 acres right now with all the services are in. We're next to where most of the property is. We have a regional airport, and I think it's kind of the key to a good job being in a place where everything's lined up to happen and you can get credit for it.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Robert Winningham, Director of Economic Development for Carrollton. And I met many of you years ago when I was in Allen and Prosper. And see you, Jesse. But Carrollton's a little different than Allen and Prosper. It's been a good experience for me the last 4.5 years in Carrollton. We're different in that we're mainly built out. And if a broker or a company would like to find warehouse or industrial space in Carrollton, it's probably because of our location, our proximity to I-35, just north of DFW Airport, just north of LBJ Freeway, and then the Bush Tollway runs through Carrollton, and then we touch on Highway 121 to our north. So the location for Carrollton has been a key selling point for us. We've got about 44 million square feet of industrial, and Brad Mink, my predecessor, many years ago, a good friend of mine, I used to compete with Brad when I was in Allen. I used to wonder, what the heck is he doing over there? Well, I'll tell you what, that guy is pretty phenomenal in putting up nearly 44 million. I think back then they had 35 million square feet. But basically, we're in the process of filling up any vacancy we have. So it's good to see you all today.
Hi, good afternoon. I am Brianna Chacon. A little bit about me. First off, I'm super sad that dessert is out now while I'm up here. Please save me some cake. So a little bit more about me, other than I obviously enjoy cake. So I am the mayor for the city of Princeton. I also have 5 children. I am a real estate agent. I operate a nonprofit, and I am the women's leader at our church. So if you ever want to find the busiest woman in the room, I promise it's typically always me. Our city is unique, so unlike Carrollton, we are not built out. So I always like to tell people that we stayed hidden for a long time on the map. Nobody knew where Princeton was, just by a simple raise of hands. Who doesn't know where Princeton is? Wow, look, we're getting a little more famous. There's more than that. So we're just east of McKinney. We've got a lot of land. We're excited about development. What makes us a little bit more unique is that while we are growing, we have been very good at keeping our small town feel during that growth, and we've maintained that culture. So we try to integrate continuously our community development along with our economic development, and our business partnerships really get alongside of that. So we've grown. We partnered with Habitat for Humanity lately. Meals on Wheels. We've got several nonprofits that we're running. We've got a pregnancy crisis center van that will be visiting our city soon. So all of our businesses typically get excited about that and partner with us. So we like to maintain those partnerships, and it's helped with our growth.
Appreciate it. So for my clients, the biggest thing right now is kind of getting a handle on the economy. So I wanted to get in, get a pulse of the economy in each of your markets, rent growth, occupancy levels, population growth, that kind of thing.
Right, well, in McKinney, obviously, everyone who's been around for a long time remembers McKinney when it was just this farm country up in northern Texas. But those who don't know it right now, we just passed 210,000 people in population growth, which is amazing for McKinney. And a lot of that comes from the quality of life that McKinney has to offer, but also business opportunity. And what we're seeing from, especially from an industrial side, is we have, again, I came to this position in 2018, and at that time we had about 6 million square feet of new industrial coming into the pipeline. And a lot of that was product that we incentivized because we needed that product, we needed that inventory. And over the last 4 years, almost immediately as it's delivering, it's being sold. But the customers that we're seeing and the product mix that we're seeing going into those facilities is different because once we hit that critical mass, we stopped doing the incentives for spec industrial and looked at just doing end user incentives. But a lot of those clients weren't what the traditional weren't your logistics, weren't your distribution or light assembly or anything like that. We started seeing aviation engineering. We started seeing health tech, biotech, pharma, kind of that higher end user, which is kind of what we're going after, because it meets more as the rising cost of living in the northern communities is going up. We need to be able to provide jobs that give a livable wage there. And so a lot of the product that's being delivered right now, and that was going on, is we just, one of our newer companies is called ILS Dummies. And I'm sure everyone in here has eaten gummies before. This is not those type of gummies. Not legal in Texas. But they make a pharmaceutical grade nutraceutical for children's gummies, for vitamins. But the process in which they're doing it, it's not the large fat stuff and dumb stuff. That's why they can't do prescription grade gummies yet. But they have developed a new manufacturing process for exact dosing in each gummy so that you're getting a exact amount of each nutrient in it versus just a pool of, I might be getting more of this, more of that. So, but a very, very technical process for what you would think of for a gummy company. And then things like Stat Lab have done, they do oncology products. They help the testing kits for a lot of oncology at a much higher rate than some of their competitors. And they've done 2 expansions recently into some of that existing space. So we're seeing, but also those higher end uses kind of command a higher price, can pay the higher price rent. We're seeing rents anywhere from $8 to $11 a foot for some of our new products. East Group has delivered 200,000 square feet of a 400,000 square foot development right on 121, and they're getting 11. I think the last lease they signed was 11.56. So you're definitely seeing higher prices up in the northern industrial communities, but we're getting I wouldn't say a better user, but a different user that has a more expensive product or service that can afford to absorb that kind of rental rate. But that's kind of where we're heading, and we like the direction of where we're going. We like those types of uses for our city, so a very high capital investment when they go into those products. And it provides, again, our main goal is we want to bring businesses in that can provide a livable wage for people to live and work.
The Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex is the largest metropolitan area in the country without a waterport. There are only 2 in the top 10, us and Atlanta has Savannah. So what we've seen with the intermodal coming in is that we've become a counterbalance to Alliance. And so what you see typically out of Alliance, we compete against them. We've absorbed about 20 million square feet of industrial over the last 10 years in Hutchins. I think Wilmer and Lancaster have done about the same. I'm only 8.5 square miles. I'm 36 months away from build out. I think Wilmer still has 22 square miles to go, and then there's a lot of property in Lancaster left. So we've been very brisk with industrial distribution, like manufacturing.
To add on to what Guy's saying, it has, in Lancaster, I think doubled our amount of industrial space in the last 4 years with a lot of new construction. The thing that we're seeing is a transition, and I think the previous panel mentioned it, from pretty much exclusively distribution space to a lot more manufacturing. So we're seeing not only can factories, people making doors, I think the biggest diagram modeling plant in the country is going in right now. In addition to very high-tech distribution, like the new Walmart facility. So that's a big change, and it's really not only affecting the market, it's affecting the community as far as the jobs that are coming in at much higher pay than ever. So a lot of exciting things.
Yeah, so Carrollton being built out doesn't necessarily mean that there's no opportunity for you in the industrial market. In fact, we're focused primarily on business retention and expansion, what we call BRE in our business. With 44 million square feet of industrial, we also only have about 4.5 million of office. So we've put, as a city, we put a lot of focus on our Trinity Mill Station development, which will feature Class A office and so forth. And then we have about 7 million of retail. And we do a lot with our friends at Whitesman. I know Matt Rosenfeld is here, and other retail developers, Newquest and so forth. But going back to industrial, we like to help you make money, brokers. For example, in the last month, we helped Lee & Associates make money. One of their clients, Buzzballs, we went before the council and requested a 380 grant for their expansion. So Ken Weston came out pretty good on that deal. And we'll do more of those. We don't have 4A or Type A money. All of our incentive funds come through the general fund, but we have money to do incentives.
So my community is a little bit unique. Most of you in here in real estate, you understand that there is an affordable housing crisis pretty much over all of North Texas. However, Princeton, I still have plenty of inventory, new home inventory that's under 300,000. So with that product, we're continuously still seeing people move in. We're continuously still seeing rooftops go up. And with those rooftops, the businesses are following. I don't have free space. I don't have any type of lease space available. As soon as a shopping strip comes up, they're leased out. As soon as an old building has old space, it's leased out. Our business park is about 80% full. We just purchased, our EDC did 30 acres to go to an industrial park. That is also filling up quick. So we just don't have that problem that we're seeing in other parts of the Metroplex. And I attribute that mainly towards our housing. Because we see that has worked in tandem there. But as you said, and as we've said earlier on the other panel, creativity is the key in this market on anything, whether you're on the residential side, the commercial side, the municipal side. We get very, very creative with our incentives. We are still a smaller city. We're at about 35,000. So we have that affordability that we can look at each project as its own individual project and get creative with how we can incentivize that. Whether it is a partnership with our EDC, whether it is we put them in a tourist zone, whatever that is, we get very creative. So if you're looking for land in an industrial area, come away.
Yeah, can you guys expand on that? I want to hear some of the unique incentives that you guys offer. I mean, it seems like a lot of, you're trying to target higher income jobs there. So what are some of the ways you can do that?
So, I mean, one of the targets we're going after for industrial, we would love to get a science park, kind of a tech R&D park, and we've been talking to several industrial developers about, when they are coming into market and looking at building product, we have an incentive that we've developed to help offset some of the cost of building a higher space. So we know that, when you're talking like clean lab, wet lab, dry lab space, I mean, you're getting up to $100, hundreds of dollars a foot. And to do that speculatively, even though there's a huge demand for that out in the market, if you were to build wet lab space tomorrow, you could probably build big enough pre-construction. So given that our strategic direction is to look at things like life sciences, pharma, things that need that in the wet lab, dry lab space, we're willing to put in resources from the EDC to help offset the cost of doing those HVAC upgrades, doing the bigger slabs, doing the water needs that the extra water needs that those types of uses do. So we're aggressively seeking, we're talking to a couple people right now, we're always seeking partnerships, and we're willing to do that on a rehab basis too. So if there's an existing building there that needs to use, then we're willing to talk about that. And then one of the other things is our development services department, I think I was talking to one of my counterparts at the table earlier. One of the big issues right now is when the zoning codes for industrial. Right now, previously, McKinney had a zoning code for industrial that was for distribution logistics. It called for a much less parking ratio than a commercial industrial. So we had a big aviation engineering company that wanted to move into the facility that only had 80 parking spots for 300 employees. So then we're kind of pigeonholed. Like, okay, well, now what do? We have these uses, but we don't have a building that has the right parking ratio. So our development services developed a flex code, so a flex industrial rating that is not like commercial industrial, so it doesn't have the really high parking ratio that commercial does, but it's in between that and the distribution logistics. So a lot of times, just think about when you're planning your building, there's a lot of different uses out there. You don't always just want to build it. I know that it's dollars and cents, and I get that. But you're always limiting yourself by what you can do from a lot of these new industries that are coming out that would take this space if it were available. So, and we're doing things on the creative side, like our development services has allowed for us to shut docks if need be and convert those truck docking spaces into parking lots. But then you're also in a truck lane at the back of between buildings, so it's you know, creative, but Band-Aid on what really needs to be a whole. So, but we're looking at different types of things, and we're definitely putting funding towards those higher.
In the context of incentives, there's a hierarchy of things that we look at. And for us, it's the direct amount of taxable value that we're going to get from that facility. That's the major thing we look at. Then we look at the quality of the jobs and then the quantity of jobs. And so that's what we do, but I think something that gets missed sometimes is why we do it. We want to create taxable value so that we can convert that taxable value into something that benefits our citizens. And that's what we look at. If we can generate taxable value, we can have better parks, better police, fire, senior programs, things like that. So from a real estate context, when you come and talk to the city, you need to keep those things in mind of what we're looking at. Now, we have become a little stricter with incentives, and I think most of the Southern Dallas communities have. So if you have a project that has really high wages, you have a project that has a really high taxable value per square foot, then you're going to get a better deal.
So if you look at a city as a business, the way cities make money is typically on property taxes and sales taxes. So if you're coming in with an industrial project or some kind to a city, the more you can look at the impacts that those will make. So 5 years ago, if you looked at any of the communities in the southern part of the Dallas area, what Guy said, we'd be looking at values, so how big is the building, what is going to be assessed at. It's not the investment that you make, it's how DCAD quantifies investment, because that's the taxes that we get. What's happened in the last few years is there's been so much demand, cities have been more and more selective, so we're looking at the industrial projects, data centers, things that are going to pay higher wages. One of the things that's a little bit unique, and again, this goes back to make the city listen to what you're doing by kind of sweetening the pot for the city and developers. So one of the things we've been looking at is having developers source the sales tax on construction and equipment back to the city that we're in. And so typically what happened in the past is people would build in Lancaster and they buy everything in Dallas, and Dallas would benefit from the things we're doing. So by doing that, the sales tax, and there's a way to figure out a way to source your sales to the community that you're in. We can take the sales taxes and rebate a portion of those back to the company, which makes a big difference for them, and makes a bigger difference for the community. And if you look at our sales tax collections, they've almost doubled in the last 2 or 3 years for the big projects that we got. I think the other thing that's happened has been, looking at the higher wage jobs. Lancaster, a lot of the cities in the southern part of the metropolitan area are typical suburban communities that demographics may be a little bit different. But if you look at Lancaster, the school district is high B rated, so that's like McKinney, that's like Plano. So the jobs that people are looking for are going to be the higher wage jobs. I think right now, about 90% of the people who live in Lancaster or someplace else, usually where the wages are higher. So when you come in with a project, you have jobs, things like that, you can get a much better reception.
Yeah, to follow up on what they're saying is we also look at taxable value and the jobs created and salary levels and all that. I think the first question when a broker or site selector contacts us about Carrollton is, before we have any discussion on incentives or what we could offer, is my question to them is, have you found a building? Because I don't want to go through this entire exercise of doing the prospect questionnaire that we typically have a broker fill out or a company fill out, and then do the impact analysis and all that, only to find that they don't really have the building, they can't find the space. At 97% occupancy, that's the first question. But then beyond that, if they do have the space, if they found it, then we do look at all those factors that Carl and Guy just mentioned, and we do the full analysis. Because at the end of the day, when we bring this to the council, which is basically our EDC board, it's gotta be a win-win for the community. We're talking about taxpayer dollars here. So we have a fiduciary duty for every dollar that we provide to make sure that the citizens are getting their money back in return, and that there's a really good payback. And it's subjective as to where you determine a good payback is, but I let the council determine that. We just present and make our recommendation. But as I said before, there's plenty of ways for to provide incentives. We have the triple free port. We have the money out of the general fund. And actually, in some ways, the 380 grant from the council is much more flexible than when I was in Allen using the type A or 4A money, which is a little more restrictive. So we like to do deals, but it all comes down to, hey, can you find the space? And if you're a broker out there, one other way to make money in Carrollton is, hey, cold call and find some buildings, some companies to represent. Because when they're ready to expand, we'll be right there with you.
The great thing about being the last person is that I could just say everything they said. Because we're kind of all, we have the same thing, and you're hearing the same things over and over again. And Princeton is definitely right on board with everything that you guys said. You know, we weigh every project to see what is the taxable income going to be on that, what is the job opportunity going to be like that, because ultimately it is our tax dollars. It is our citizens that have to live there next to these industries that come in. So everything is put under a microscope to make for sure it does fit within the parameters and the vision of our city. But beyond, you know, just the incentives of it, we again like to personalize everything, and we're very strategic about that on the front end. So everything that we do, whether it's our business part, our industrial part, we like to see how do we incentivize it from the get-go, where you don't have to come to me and ask, okay, what are the incentives for this? That is something that we can go out and actually market our city with to say, here are the incentives that we offer to begin with. One great thing that we're actually looking at right now that is unique from a lot of other cities is that we're trying to put in an entire medical district and incentivize that project. So many other medical districts that come up in cities happen organically. You'll have a couple of doctors pop in, then you'll have a specialty pop in, and then hopefully you'll have a hospital pop in on the front or on the back end of that later. We're trying to say, okay, from the get-go, how do we have an entire medical community, that we have the living spaces there, that we have our medical offices there, that we have the retail around it, and incentivize the entire project from the start. So that is a little bit unique that we like to do, just to, again, make it more lucrative on both sides for the investor as well as for the city.
I think I have a question, I think.
While you are on the subject of sales taxes, you were previously in tax. Can you talk a bit about the benefits and limitations of doing that source and sales tax based on construction or sales? I know you ran the gamut in that a long time before other people did.
Yeah, so we made a lot of people mad. We set up what we call purchasing companies that would make purchases for the parent company. So take a home builder like maybe a DR Horton or a Kimball Hill Homes. What they would do is they would set up a purchasing company, and that purchasing company would buy everything wholesale and pass it through and sell it to the parent company retail, and we would collect the sales tax at Saxon, and then we would rebate a portion of that back. Some of the other cities felt like we were pirating their sales tax and went to the legislature and changed the rules. Now there is, if you look at the legislature this year, there's always issues with sourcing sales tax, where it goes, who gets it. We're looking at maybe doing a destination-based sales tax. So, for example, the Amazon for Fort Worth is in Hazlet. Now, Amazon is a marketplace, but the sales tax is cited often in Hazlet, but most of it's delivered in Fort Worth. Fort Worth wants that sales tax. And so they're going to the legislature and trying to change the rules to, I think Carrollton's going through this too.
Yeah, we're in part of the lawsuit.
Yeah, they're in a lawsuit. So it's just very competitive and very, a little bit cutthroat with how sales tax is sourced inside.
Yeah, it's an important issue to Lancaster. So I don't know, last legislative session, there was a bill passed, the bill that was discussed and never passed to go to destination sourcing. And what that does to communities with a lot of distribution space, it can be really negative. benefit are the cities that spend the most. So park cities are going to do a lot better. We're going to do probably a lot worse. So it's something that we're looking at. We want to make sure that there's some kind of fairness. And like I said, this has come up before, it hasn't passed, but who knows with the legislature.
Yeah, and then that's through the comptroller's office as well. I think they're spearheading the effort. And, with 44 million square feet of distribution and industrial, obviously we would stand to be hurt, and so would Round Rock, by the way. I think they would be hurt the most with Dell Computer being a huge source of sales tax for them.
So continuing on sales tax, I know Nebraska Furniture Mart nearby, they get a big rebate, and then all the retail is kind of surrounded that and brought a lot to the city. But for you, it makes sense not to have as much incentives for some of the distribution and warehousing, since it's pretty well built out. Is there something you would do more for retail and kind of trying to create a more balanced community there in some of the smaller markets?
Well, yeah, I can speak for Kenny on markets. And as far as retail goes, we're a organization, so our incentive funds aren't for retail. We're for corporate business, for industrial, for job creation, and for business growth and expansion, and relocation. So when it comes to, we would certainly look at what the business community is going to do, and a lot of these industrial uses do create lots of tax. So sales tax isn't just from the restaurants and retail, it's corporations generate a lot of sales tax because why this lawsuit exists. So it is really, we're not really focused on retail. We have CDC that supports retail as well as they need. So they're more on the side as well.
We would incentivize conventional retail heavily, not because it makes us a lot of money, it's because that's what our citizens want. And for example, we did Chick-fil-A distribution, $320 million, 300 jobs, $70,000 each. And our citizens would be much more interested in getting a Chick-fil-A restaurant that costs $2 million. So there are some things that are just political that kind of go beyond cost benefit. And we would, in my town, incentivize retail heavily.
Exactly, in Lancaster, we can bring in billions of dollars of new industrial development that people in the community would be more excited about more retail. It is, before being in Lancaster, I was in the city of Dallas for 27 years and did redevelopment. There's a lot of money in communities in the southern part of Dallas County that is being spent elsewhere, and to redevelop things, set up a new retail market, you basically have to start somewhere, bring in higher quality tenants, and then prove that the market's going to work. We talked with Mark over there and some stuff. But one of the things that's going to be happening in Lancaster, and it's actually happening right now, is our little downtown square has been about half of the buildings that have been purchased are being redeveloped, and we're coming in with winery, interesting coffee shop with a Japanese cold brew kind of coffee making. Kaiose will be coming down. Some other tenants of Italian, but different tenant. My belief is that's going to prove to the market that people will spend money on higher quality products, and then we'll go to the next thing and the next thing. But there's a lot of demand, a lot of pent-up demand for retail in industrial areas and communities to the south. The other opportunity I see is if you look at the large industrial areas like we have, like Mohr has, Carrollton, there's not a lot of little restaurant space where you have thousands and thousands of employees. If you could carve out a little spot, in the midst of all the employees where people go on their short lunch hour and get something to eat, I think that it would do really well, but no one seems to be talking about it, so pretty fun.
Well, to that point, Carl, there's a development in Carrollton that did just that. And I credit the developer, NewQuest, they're out of Houston. They did a little research, and they found that in Carrollton there were some of these older corner shopping centers And one such corner was the southeast corner of Bush Tollway and Josie Lane. And when Newquest bought that property, at probably pennies on the dollar, I can't say it, they found that their center was only about 10% leased. Today, after they dumped about $4 million into it, and the city put in another $800,000 as an incentive to be their partner, that center is 100% leased. When it first started, when they first renovated, it was collecting about $17 a square foot. Today, it's over $41 a square foot in rental revenue. And there's a waiting list to get into that shopping center. I don't know if you all have eaten in Carrollton, but there's a lot of Korean, Asian-centric, and that's what Newquest focused on. So we found that to be a tremendous partnership with an incentive on the retail side. But I would encourage you, to the point that's been made here, research the community in which you're trying to develop or broker a deal. Because if you find out what the council wants and what the EDC board is trying to bring, if you can find a way to help that community bring that product, if it's out in Chillicothe, it might be a new Dairy Queen, who knows, but the city will incentivize if it's something they really want.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. So just on the development side, if that's where you are, please go to your council meetings, your EDC meetings, and see what the vision of that city is. You're going to get such a stronger foothold actually knowing that vision on the front side. As far as for Princeton goes, we absolutely would incentivize retail. Just to echo what you guys have already said, that's what our citizens want. So we're definitely not going to turn down a Chick-fil-A. If any of you have any networking with Chick-fil-A, we will not turn you down. And I think if anybody on council did turn you down, they wouldn't be there the next cycle. So it pains me to see my sales tax dollars leave and go to our surrounding cities. And if they're spending money there, that's not coming back into my community. So whatever we need to do to capture that and keep those sales tax dollars there, so if I can incentivize that and get you there and keep that money there, that's absolutely what we're going to do.
And to add to that, one of the things that constrains the finances of a city is the fact that the amount of money you can collect on property taxes is limited. So as the value goes up, property tax rates go down. If you look at, number one, you look at a lot of places that are growing with industrial, the tax rates, whatever they are now, they're going to be going down, 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 which is going to affect the bottom line of projects. The other thing is the on sales tax.
So off of that, where is your workforce kind of based? Is it there in your community, in a place like McKinney, or are they still community?
Yeah, McKinney is a big workforce city, and they supply a lot of the workforce to our surrounding cities. Prior to us getting a lot of commercial development, that's why a big part of our strategy is going after a lot of these similar industries that we've done workforce studies of our community. We know the workforce that exists that we have, the 210,000 people that we have. We want to, to leverage our own resources to recruit. If we have a cluster of X amount of employees, or not just in McKinney, but in the surrounding regions, sorry, for instance, we enjoy shopping. But we survey the whole region, and that's kind of what we go after. There's a big, it's an understated thing of selling promoting employees. So we have a cluster of aviation-centered people. We will seek out aviation companies and say, like, look who's right here in our community that you can take advantage of and come and locate your business operations here. So there's a lot of that. And so we are we're trying to reverse that trend right now. I think the majority of residents in McKinney are commuting out to Allen, Frisco, to Dallas, everywhere. We're trying to change that trend and get them to stay here and have multiple communities.
So this is going to sound kind of big brother, but we can take driver's license plates and we can determine geographically where they live. And most of our employees come from what I would call the Southwest cities. Duncanville, DeSoto, Lancaster, and then to the east, Mississippi, things like that. And then a lot of them come from Ellis County. None of the cities in southern Dallas participate in DART except for Glen Heights. So what we've done is we've come together with a conglomerate group, and we have limited bus service, and then we also have a shuttle service that reciprocates with DART, and each of the cities pay for that. So we do have some limited mass transit. A lot of it's just a fallout of a good economy, and it's just tough to find good employees right now. And we think it's putting some upward pressure on wages in our area.
So we have DART in Carrollton, unlike the previous cities in which I worked. So I had to kind of adjust and kind of, through our BRE visits to companies, find out, okay, are you using DART? And to our surprise, many companies are. For example, Western Extrusions even started a program for the last mile where they got a grant from the North Central Texas Council of Governments to have cars pick up employees at the DART station and bring them that last mile to the facility where they manufacture aluminum products. So DART is a big advantage. You know, one can debate on how much money I think we put $36 million a year to DART. That's a full penny. If I had half a cent on that, I would have $17 million in my office to do deals. But we use DART, and we try to use it to our advantage. Then obviously with our location on I-35 and Bush and 121, we're easily accessible.
So Princeton's definitely a commuter city. We don't have any type of public transportation. So pretty much all of our residents do have to travel outside of Princeton to go to employment. However, I think a lot of small cities saw a huge shift in that during the pandemic because everyone started working at home. So when you have that shift and everyone is now working at home and our bigger cities aren't as occupied during the day in that office space, because of that, we have seen more growth come to Princeton to be industrialized because they saw that opportunity that those people are there. Also, a big thing that just recently happened at McKinney, you know all about this, the McKinney Airport there is expanding to do commercial flights in and out. Since that was announced, it's like the floodgates opened in Princeton. Do what?
Big name.
Big, oh, I thought y'all approved to go to Bond. Okay, well, it's going to Bond, right?
Yes.
There we go, okay, it's going to Bond. But since they announced that, it has been nonstop calls for us on the development side because they see that potential in McKinney. So, sorry, McKinney, we're gonna try to keep our people.
So on that development side, we have the most industrial square footage under construction right now in the country. What kind of concerns could you have for that? Is there, workforce concerns, lack of workforce, overbuild out? I mean, it seems like we have the demand, but just want to get some insight on that.
I think workforce is a nationwide issue. Everything that's happened with COVID and working from home and just the disappearance of employees. It's strange. You talk to business owners who pre-COVID had employees. Post-COVID, they offered the same job to those people and they're just not working. So what are they doing for it? So workforce is definitely an issue. I would totally agree with the governor of Princeton. Collin County's lack of mass transit is something that needs to be addressed for long-term solution because we can't continue to grow without being able to move people around unless we get to a situation where everyone's mobile and can go anywhere or can work from anywhere. So that is a hindrance. We have several employers that bus, same thing, that bus hundreds of employees a day, that don't have reliable transportation. But again, that also goes back to that need for creating a higher skill, higher wage, job from employers to recruit to our city, so that people can have a local wage, they can have reliable transportation, they're not relying on public transit. So I think that's good. Workforce is definitely going to continue to be an issue. I think a lot more people are coming here, with all, especially within, from the industrial perspective, the recent announcement in Sherman about the API plant. I think you're going to see a lot of growth in between and Sherman, and you're already seeing it. But I think it's just going to exponentially keep going up, which then is going to create more workforce, but also create more demand for
Are there any public transportation things in the works that, other than the airport?
So, if you're short of getting emails, the one thing I would recommend, there's Bureau of Labor Statistics. If you sign up for their emails, they'll send something, probably 2 or 3 things a day, and some of it's like throwaway immediately, but they talk about job growth specifically in areas. So the Dallas area led the nation in new employment between December last year and this year. We had another thing where if you look at it, the amount of the addition of new people to the labor force was about 2/3 of the new employment. So what's happening is we're getting a lot of people, the COVID unemployment numbers have been falling, so that's part of it. But we're continuing to get huge numbers of 300,000, I think, in the last year, new people in the workforce. That's really changing things. Even with that, we had a job fair this last week for Walmart. So they looked at starting salaries for people to work in the great e-commerce facility. Starting salaries in the e-commerce facility, the lowest ones they were talking to people about were about $24 an hour. They went up to $34 an hour, where people needed training. They'd send them to California to get some extra training. Think about the change in the labor cost compared to, looking at distribution jobs 4 years ago, where it was $15, $60 an hour. People come in and say, maybe that great labor news for you. We're bringing in 200 jobs at $15 an hour. So big changes, and I think that, as you get in areas like Lancaster, as you get the manufacturing jobs that pay more, it's going to bump up the price of labor on distribution jobs. And I'm not sure if the companies are all factoring that in. Maybe you don't tell them if you're selling them to real estate, but I think that's going to be happening.
You have another question?
I do. I've got a question. So we did a little informal survey in Corning to find out what was going on, and we discovered that what is missing, a big gap of our workforce, is between the age of 17 and 19. And the reason is driver training was stopped. So all the kids that were in driver training could no longer take it because they couldn't self-distance in a car. And then all the driver training places went out of business because they're having clients and they found other jobs. And so there's a huge gap in kids that don't know how to drive. They can't go to job fairs, they don't have transit. So my question, are your school districts still doing driver training? How are you getting the kids back to the driver training program so they can go back to work?
Honestly, don't know. So we're in Dallas ISD. And just a little bit of context. We were the only city in Dallas County that actually lost population from 1980 until 2010. And a lot of you folks have been around a while, remember the old Mohr School District. We were absorbed by Dallas, and we have a good relationship with them, but it's a broader area than just Wilmer and Hutchins. We're two, let's say 1A towns. Wilmer Hutchins High School is a 5A school. So most of our kids come from the Highland Hills area of South Dallas. And we do have a relationship with the school district. I know that UNT Dallas and Cedar Valley have really good programs. They even have logistics disciplines where they can go in and train, and they design programs for our local businesses to try to get those younger people into the workforce, but specifically for driver's education. I just don't know.
I just want to say one brief thing. So I know my 16-year-old says, why do I need to drive when you can take me wherever I want to go?
Just out of curiosity, is anyone in here with Workforce Solutions? No, I know something, you are? No, okay. I know that something with Princeton that we partner with Workforce Solutions through our EDC and our CDC, and that if there are gaps, so say we're talking to a business and we're trying, working on our business retention, and they say, well, we've got this employee, but she's having a hard time with childcare. Workforce Solutions can actually provide vouchers to help pay for childcare. So Workforce Solutions is a great partner that if you are having employment problems, you can go to them, and they're free resources. So utilize those free resources as a smaller city, or as a bigger city, whichever you need to do, but there are solutions out there, but I am curious if Workforce Solutions does have something like that, because I know their programs are so vast, so I'm gonna check into
We
that.
already have, and they were even unaware of the problem until we brought it up. And if you don't have a transit agency, it can't really help you. They can give you doctors to a transit agency, but if you don't have one.
Are y'all pushing the online programs for for driver's ed?
Well, yes, but the problem is you do the online program, but there are so few spots for behind wheel training that if you are not in their on-hand class, they won't take you. So it's hard to find that behind the wheel training right now. We know a lot of families that had to drive to Houston to get their permits because the wait time at the DPS is 3 to 6 months. So you can't get a driver's license, and that's
Well, you're gonna learn how to drive real well if you go to Houston, so. Because your experience right there.
So that shows kind of one of the issues that DFW has, you know, with public transportation and that kind of thing, as we expand and get bigger. But with all this growth, where do we have some industrial land left, and in those, anything that you want to point out, any kind of projects you guys want to point out or anything like that?
I mean, McKinney is only about a third total built out, or 112 total square miles. So about 63 of that is actually built. So we have tons of opportunity. Speaking of, you know, talk a lot about the proposition to the air terminal. You know, why that makes a lot of sense for McKinney is because east of the airport, east of KI International Airport, is just hundreds of acres of greenfield right now. So if anyone who's not looking at McKinney for industrial uses for those types of uses, good time to look. And to, you know, in the northeast of McKinney, again, thousands of acres. To the north, just north of McKinney, where Green is going to go, the 380 bypass. If you've been following text out, 380 bypass has been creating a whole new transit-oriented corridor in the northern part of McKinney, as well as the Collin County Outer Loop, which Collin County has already been expanding. So, and all of that between those is green McKinney. So there's tons and tons of land for opportunities.
Really quickly, so Majestic has 1 million square feet that they just got a CO for. It doesn't have a tenant. And Seaford has 200,000 square foot buildings in my city that'll be finished probably in October that we need tenants for, and that's really it. I've got about 400 acres of green space left, and then I'm at build out. Loop 9 is coming through the southern part of Dallas County and northern Ellis County. It's going to touch on Mohr and Ferris, all the way out to Seagoville. So if you're looking for an industrial play, you might want to look out there. It might be a good time to start looking at that area.
Lancaster still has about 10 to 15 years, given our current absorption rates of land that's available. You know, we're between 35, 20, 45 and Route 9 on the south, you know, plus the inland port adjacent to us with rail spurs connecting a lot of land. There's a lot of opportunity where we are, you know, and I think going, you know, after that builds up, I think going south, different communities along 35 and 45, I think there are some opportunities there.
Yeah, in Carrollton right now, Prologis is developing about 1 million square feet. I don't know if you're familiar with where Halliburton used to be, or, you know, had a major spot there on Beltline Road. So Halliburton sold off the front 40 acres of their 60-acre site. Halliburton's remaining in the back 20, but at their front 40 on Beltline Road, right at Webb Chapel, Prologis is planning on about 1 million square feet new tilt wall. Of course, you know, with the interest rates and so forth, they're trying to press the pause button right now. But for a build-to-suit, you know, if we have a tenant that needs something fairly quickly in the next 24, 36 months, we can just take them right to Prologis. Now, for existing buildings, we do have an industrial rehab grant program that we just started a couple of years ago. So for older buildings on major thoroughfares like Bush Freeway or I-35 or any of our other major arterial roads in Carrollton, a building can qualify for grant money to fix it up. whether it be the facade, whether it be landscape, ornamental fencing, what have you, but the council will get in there and provide some dollars for that. And in fact, Presto Products took advantage of that on their expansion. They're gonna fix up the frontage on Beltline Road with some of the council money. So now, I wanted to throw this out. Henry Billingsley, we do a lot with Henry and Lucy because they own Austin Ranch, basically, in the north side of Carrollton. And I was talking to Henry about a week ago, and you know, he just bought 2 buildings. He's got to keep his son George busy, he said. So they're developing 2 450,000 square foot buildings on I-35 and 380 up in Denton County. And I think you're going to see more, and you all probably know this, more developers looking further out because land costs are a little better and available land is better. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some more development going from I-35 west towards our friend Kevin Holzbach out in Decatur. I know he's got some land available. So I think that will be happening in the future.
Just to echo what McKinney said down there, all of our cities north and northeast of McKinney up in that territory of Collin County, we're all ready for growth. None of us are built out. We've got the space available for it. Princeton definitely has space available. So again, if that's something you're interested in, we are definitely hungry for the growth. But again, just to reiterate, wherever you're moving in that direction, whichever city you're entertaining, make for sure you get in front of their council and know the vision of that city. There are many cities that absolutely have the capacity for the growth and the potential for the growth, but that may not necessarily be the vision of that city to grow. There's still a lot of other little cities that they're happy being smaller, which is great. We like to retire in those cities. But for the cities that are growing, get in front of their councils, see what their vision is, and if that aligns with you, I promise you there's incentive money out there and there's opportunities to partner with them.
Very much appreciate everybody speaking here. Any other questions anybody has?
You want to make a comment from the peanut gallery for the economic development teams that we have in Dallas for first rate.
Yeah, hi, Brad Copeland. I'm with CLX Ventures. John and I actually started the business 37 some odd years ago at Graybill Grow Company, so I've been Grow Company and Grow Family. I now have my own firm, called CLX Ventures. We focus almost exclusively on ground up industrial development. Hello, I'm Bill Bummer with Van Trust. I run the Texas office of Van Trust. We're a developer, does office, industrial, and multifamily, and happy to be here.
My name is Granger Hassman. I'm the Vice President of Estimating and Pre-Construction for Adolphson and Peterson. Adolphson and Peterson is a national general contractor, construction manager. We're in Minnesota, Texas, obviously, Colorado, Phoenix, Arizona. Primary markets are obviously industrial, commercial office, healthcare, higher ed, and municipal.
Hello, I'm Tim Keith with Colliers Partners, and no, I'm not an office developer. Bill and I partnered a year and a half ago to expand our influence into industrial. We also do multifamily and mixed-use development.
Allison Yost, I am Senior VP at Colliers, and I concentrate on tenant wrapped industrial.
Thank you, Allison. We're going to start off, at the first panel was wonderful enough to explain how this is a 75 million square feet of the and most of this speculative. But I want everybody at the panel, the developers first, talk about the market for spec and what do they think makes it different. And we've got a ton of spec going on in Dallas. So surprise, surprise. It's always like that. So what's the market look like for you? We can start with you. We'll start with the other end of the stack. Go ahead, Bill. Why don't you get us off with that? Bill? Yeah.
Sure. So the spec market is Dallas for you call frothy. At 75 million square feet, we have about twice as much spec as any other market in the country right now. So I don't want to say it's cautionary there, but there does need to be some space absorbed in the DFW market right now. And we always call it the pig through the python. So the pig is getting pretty far down through the python, and once we see all that being see the space being delivered, absorbed, going into 23, going into 24, most likely there'll be a space deficit coming in just because the lag starts to go. Okay.
So who likes their stuff delivered on their porch at home when you get there? It's all gonna be fine. Because we consume that way, the demand for warehouse space is just continue, no matter how many square feet we have under construction now. I am glad there's a pause, but we're all gonna be fine.
Yeah, John, I feel like I said this earlier, I feel like maybe we're gonna be the Department of Redundancy Department up here today, kind of reviewing some of the stuff that was said in the earlier panels, but really the thing I see with spec development at this point, it's gonna be basically not shut down entirely, but it's gonna be very slow in terms of new starts, and that's mainly because most of the lenders are pencils down right now, as well as allowing institutional equity. So there's still private equity that's interested in potentially getting on board with some spec development, but most of just the uncertainty in the marketplace, frankly, is what's got them stopped and stymied. So I just see the supply, new starts cutting off pretty dramatically, I would say, in 2023. So capital markets start freeing up, which maybe mid to end of the year, we might guess.
Before we bring in the other two candidates, I want to do a follow-up to that question. How are you guys underwriting deals today? How would you underwrite a new spec development deal in the house today?
I'll start with that one. So I think it's going to be a similar answer to all of us, but it's going to be focused on tenant demand. What size are the tenants in large amounts looking for space? What communities will allow industrial zoning, and where do you get a site? And then most importantly, is there money? Right, so a small, medium-sized project is more likely to get capitalized at a time like this, but there's no guarantee of that. So it has to be really substantiated by the market, your strategy, and frankly, your size of capital.
Yeah, so I would say, the limited amount of stuff that is going to get capitalized is probably going to be, John, those, I guess, institutions or even developers looking at basic yield on cost, right? So I would say it's going to be somewhere between 6 and 7% yield on cost, probably towards the higher end of that right now, frankly, to get any deal or get any capital interested in moving forward on new development.
I'll piggyback on that. The yield on cost, what that really means to the tenant is the product you may say you're probably in the mid-5s on the larger buildings. It's going to be mid-6s coming in the next year. That's really where your yields have to be in order to make it work with financing, potential cap rates, and everything else going. So everybody's predicting a dramatic rise in lease rates, and that's what it's going to take to get the development going right now.
Thanks. I want to direct this next question to Allison, and with all the spec going on with build-to-suit housing, what are tenants looking for? What are their needs today? Where are their hot buttons? And you and your partner Alan was talking earlier to that you guys run with a lot of big names and big tenants around, not just Metroplex, but does around the country. What do you guys see for trends today? What are hot buttons?
So you mentioned on the spec versus, I know you mentioned build to suit. So and then tenant needs. I'm going to kind of break that up a little bit. First, on tenant needs, a lot of it is, like you said, we all like the packages on our front doorstep. So e-commerce has totally changed, and Amazon is slowing down on taking up just new distribution. They're really looking at the logistics. So that's going to in turn change exactly how tenants operate. So that's going to become a more efficient building when it comes to trailer parking, car parking, higher clear heights, more power, because now we're seeing a lot more automation. Food is becoming a huge piece, so now cold storage is all of a sudden becoming a larger piece to all of this. So when we look at the tenant needs, truthfully, it's because of that's how we're operating. And we changed dramatically during COVID to make our lives a lot easier, which is increasing the industrial demand, especially here in a major city like Dallas-Fort Worth. When you talk about the spec, the build-to-suit, I don't necessarily see a high increase in build-to-suit just to have a high increase in build-to-suit because the pencil doesn't make sense. When you're looking at a yield on cost, the start of the project to the end of the project, we had one, and it's supposed to hopefully be announced here in the next day or two. It changed dramatically, the point. So we had a lot of developers pull back because it just did not make sense. The exit costs don't make sense to developers for build-to-suit. So when we look historically at our build-to-suits, we had KE, that's food. We had Dematic, that's full automation. Another full automation. HD Supply was a little bit different on that. That was more typical distribution, but we're not seeing build-to-suits for typical distribution. The conversation really is to start construction. The pencils aren't making sense, and so developers are waiting for tenants to basically say, I need this location, this size, in this market, and it doesn't exist. Now we have to build. So the tenant need is very strong. I don't think we're gonna have a problem. The amount of space on the market is fine. Depending on where you are, there is a little bit of a lag on square footage, but we're able to still lease, and we're able to still get product. So I think we'll ride it through pretty well, but the tenant needs, I think, are helping make buildings much more efficient and sustainable.
Thank you. And we touched on all the elements of the business so far, but we haven't touched on is the construction costs. And we've got, unfortunately, we have an expert on that sitting in the middle of our little panel here. And I've asked Ranger to really touch on a little bit of what's happened historically, not just on costs, but supply issues and material issues. And he's going to give a little seminar, a short version of a seminar on what's going on with construction costs. And this is, again, he does this every day. I called him the other day, or I emailed him the other day with a question, he answered me like that because he knew the answer. I didn't know this.
Yeah, so obviously the last 3 years have been a crazy time in our business and our world. Construction being essential, we didn't stop. So there was the constant demand, the building, the world around us was shutting down. I mean, I think everybody knows that. So the only way I can really describe pricing escalation over the last 3 years is to talk about where we are usually. So a normal year, we're 4 to 5%. The 2021 was around 20 to 25% escalation. And then last year, we probably ranged around 12 to 15%. And so, and those are average. It kind of depends on the type of construction you've got, but that's the general numbers and the range. Now, this year, I think we're all crystal balling, but I think this year we were going to get back to normal, and that'll be back to 4 to 5%. So we're trending, relatively speaking, trending in the right direction. Now, some people will say, well, costs are going to just go down, and we're not seeing that yet, unfortunately. I know for the developers in the room, not the best of news, but costs are still high, but they're not still spiking at the rate they were. We all talk supply chain, and that's been a really nice excuse. COVID the last year, not make your dates and things like that. But that's been a very big challenge as well. It's for construction manager, general contractor, our dates aren't moving. We're still held accountable to our contractual dates. So we have to get in front of those things. It's made us a lot better, honestly. I think, at first it was kind of a bummer when, people are just calling you up and telling you they can't get roof material for a year, or joist and deck for a year, and then, somebody that's asking you, have you heard about this fabricator plant in Mexico that everybody's using? So anyway, a lot of challenges, a lot of people trying to be creative, but it's starting to get back to normal, some things. There's still some items in the construction world, mechanical equipment can be a year, electrical switchgear can be a year, generators, redundant system, ATS can be a year. Luckily in the industrial world, a lot of that, the joist and deck, which is going crazy with all the Amazon and the distribution purchases, those have come back down. They're more realistic. Roof material has got back down. We're not all doing light gauge concrete on our roofs anymore. We're getting back to polyiso, TPO, not to get all construction-y, but at any rate, those are some of the things we're doing. I think question, those are the prank, but, I think the construction industry as a whole, our customers, our clients, all of us now know that we have to be more urgent, we have to be out in front, and that spike of financial commitment is a lot higher at the beginning of projects.
Thanks. Well, let's move on to, talk about having a lot of leases in place. And we have several brokers talking about what's going on, but from an owner standpoint, developer standpoint, and from a tenant rep standpoint, with the cost rising and with the leases like they are, what's going on in the leasing world from your perspective as developers first, and then Altus on our side? About this time, Doug?
Sure. I mean, I think in terms of our deal sheet, in terms of activity for large industrial deals, is still very robust. As you heard on the earlier panel, a lot of those guys are maybe shopping different markets around the country since we are a regional hub here in Dallas. My overall, I guess, observation, John, is that the process to get to the finish line with most of these tenants has doubled or tripled, if not quadrupled, in terms of decision-making time, and then working through the process. And then you have the additional problem of getting the buildings permitted, the tenant finish permitted. And so to get the tenants to, one, make a decision, then one, time get them into the building, that's probably stretched out to upwards of a year sometimes, 9 months to a year to actually get them into space. So it's a real challenge for folks like Allison and their clients. Jean is here, she's shaking her head. It's really different than what it's been historically for us. It used to be, it was a 60 to 90 day maybe process on the decision making, and then another 60 to 90 days to get all the plans done, permitted, and built out. And that's just dramatically changed as a result of COVID. And I think some of that goes back, honestly, not to drag on, but the shop top legislation that was done in 2019, which was designed to expedite all that, has been turned upside down by a lot of municipalities, and they end up basically stalling the permitting process by going back through a myriad of comments, corrections, more comments, corrections, and every time it's a 30-day delay by the time you get it back. So for you municipalities that are out there, you want to earn more money for your cities, learn how to expedite that process with your staff.
Yeah.
I was just trying to think what to say for that in terms of, other than, I think the city of Sanger is represented here. I just want to shout out to them. We did, in fact, entitle a 100 acres on schedule, on time, with limited deposits. There are towns that are open for business and doing a good job. We find ourselves migrating to those towns.
By the way, I wasn't targeting anybody that was in the room.
No, only the positive comments for folks in the room. So John, I actually forgot the question. What was it?
What are you doing about leases?
Oh, tenants, yeah.
Okay.
So on the one hand, it's easy to say that tenants are paying what's required, talking about building today. On the other hand, they're still cost conscious. Even though rent is between 6 and 9% of the cost of a good getting to your door, it's still a material cost to those users, and their job, and actually Allison's job, is to minimize that cost, to make it as efficient as possible so that we can pay less. And maybe buy local a little more instead of buying everything from all over the world. But it is about meeting the market. That's what we all have to do every day, on Allison's front, on developer front, construction front. And so costs are going up. I'm going to toss the question to Granger here if I can. Right now, everybody expects construction costs to decline because there's fewer starts of industrial buildings. But there's a $35 billion, 2 projects, 30 plus 5 billion in Sherman starting, concrete and steel. The federal incentives, whatever that program's called, financing roads and bridges is just getting to cities and towns and counties. The demand for our goods are, I guess, from a lot of different places other than just industrial buildings. So kind of concrete and steel, next 3 to 5 years, if we were to stop, would prices come down, or is it going up anyway because of everything else?
I think when you look at the economics of that, I think you would say that I think price will ultimately have to come down. I mean, I think that's just the natural economic curve. I think just what we've experienced the last 2.5 years, I mean, it's been It's just been so shocking, honestly, from a price standpoint. I'll be happy when it's not a seller's market. I'll be really glad when I feel like I have a little bit more control over what I'm buying and how I'm buying it, and who's buying it. I'll be glad when my phone's ringing with trade partners who are calling me looking for work again. So I think to answer your question, I don't know that answer exactly. I just know that in the world of construction, it's all about, you know, supply, demand, and people go where the work is. There's no doubt. So if there's opportunity and there's more opportunity in a certain sector, I think people will go there. We've all experienced these massive projects, whether it's down in Austin with Tesla or the plant you mentioned in Sherman. They send a ripple effect across the market. Labor, there's a massive labor constraint. I think the gentleman from McKinney talked about it before. I don't know where the people went. I think we can all, it's kind of funny to talk about it, but where did they go? I don't understand where the construction force went, which coincidentally is now we have less skilled, less experienced construction people on our projects, which is reducing quality, which is creating safety concerns. So all of that, I think, is to say that I think the market works itself out, and you have different levels and tiers of contractors, which a good contractor will manage and make sure you're promoting any project the right way with the right trade partners.
Yeah, so we just recently priced a big distribution building, and surprisingly, our costs did come down from our last round of pricing. I was in the neighborhood of 5% overall. Okay, so what I'm hearing from other general contractors that I'm talking to is that the backlog for a lot of their subs is quickly dropping off as some of these projects get delayed or put on hold. And so that correction, I think, happens pretty real time with the subcontractors. So I do think we're seeing some decreases. The one thing that didn't decrease and appears to still be climbing is concrete. It is the shortage of cement that I think is driving that. You can maybe, affirm that or not, but that's what I see. And all the other line items that basically stayed steady or come down slightly. So that's, for me, from a developer's perspective, is encouraging. I guess good news, bad news, the Fed policy is working, right? Stopping new development.
I think I'll just echo what Allison has to give her clients an expectation going into the build out that it's going to be X, Y. That is, you think about it, our construction costs have doubled, right? Your TI is double. And timing wise, what Brad said, giving an expectation when they really can get in and be operational is very difficult right now. A lot of times hard to swallow. And there's all kinds of factors to it, but that's the expectation you have to set when you're working with the tenants these days.
Thanks, Allison, I really want you to touch on that too, from the tenant standpoint. I mean, everything's slower, permitting's slower, materials are slower, tenants have specific needs. I know they call you and say they need it next week, and that's not so. What's the message back to them? How patient are they? What are alternatives? And they just have to get over it. I'm curious what.
So it's been tough for sure, because the delays are just, last year I had 2 tenants that missed 2 cycles. So the hard part is they have to go up and tell CFO and whomever, hey guys, we can't make summer sales or we can't make the holiday sales because we're now delayed. And so that's been the hardest part, is now we're having to re-pencil out what their profit was expected to be because we can't get in the building. So that's been a hard challenge for the delays, but also developers, and Greg said up here, they shine when they come out and help. During this time, there's been a definite highlight on the developers that are very tenant mindset and the developers that are not. And so we had some developers that are just landlords that come out and represent and just do everything possible to get it done, which has been really nice. But there's certainly been a massive delay that's affected the tenant, and on the cost, you're getting these tenant improvements that are much higher than they have been. And so when we're looking at, the rate, we're having to expect, what the spec build out is much higher. And so then when they're coming in and adding on, you're adding $2 to what they already spent, just to change it because of a particular need. We had one tenant, this is very rare, they signed a lease months ago and they're paying rent and we still don't expect for them to be in for another year. I mean, it's just, that's not normal, but they're gonna be paying rent for a full year before they actually move in. And so these improvements are becoming so much higher, so much more detailed than they ever were, and so it's definitely making it challenging for the rental rate.
Yeah, let me echo on that. I mean, because what we've seen over the last 3 years is developers really rethink their buildings in Dallas. When I first came to market 4 years ago, buildings were pretty smart. I mean, in comparison, I came from the Midwest. There are a lot more amenity, a lot more fixtures put into a building in the Midwest than they were down here, and I got most of the way it is. All right, so now fast forward to today. Speed to the market is what you want to be able to get into your buildings. Speed to the market means getting into the market and having them ready for a tenant so you get rent. So I'll give you an example of our Fort Worth building that we're completing right now. That building will have 4 lights per day. All the dock packages in, fully equipped with lights, bumpers, shelters, everything. Truck court fully fenced, 5,000 feet of office, all the switch gear sitting on the floor ready to go. So our goal there is when we have a tenant walk through, they have a timing issue, which hopefully they do have a timing issue. We're going to get in there and get them in and operating. And in the end, what our goal is to obviously make a very happy tenant, but also get rent as fast as you can. And that way you're not sitting on. Because the same thing goes on. If you don't spend money up front today, you're going to be working on your interest carry, waiting for that tenant to be in, and then paying rent.
I'm glad you made that point, because 5 years ago, buildings would deliver shell. And then they would say 3,500 square feet of office or 2,500 square feet of office, but it hadn't even gone to city for permitting. That was just their plan. So now we're sitting here waiting for office to be done. And there was a major shift in us saying, guys, if you don't have office, we're going to the next guy. And so now it's the dock levelers. If you don't have dock levelers in, we're going to the next guy. And so the greatest part is now we can actually move faster, whereas we were signing a deal and waiting, months before that stuff got done. And then with the cities and improving the office was an added on 60 days, it felt like, before it even got to the desk, and then it's another 30 days. And so it's been nice. This whole shift has been really nice to be able to say, okay, now we have levelers, lights in office, and whereas that was not the case.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I can't imagine how starting spec building without designing basic office, having lights in your spec, having levels, thinking about everything that we're doing. We've got about $1.5 billion going up right now across the country. Everything that we're doing in Western is basically set up, maybe every other door, levelers, things like that, just because it's been out later, and it's made ridiculous. And Bill, you're right. I mean, you've got to be proactive and putting those things in. I mean, we took a little different tack, and probably more like you, John. We went ahead and ordered levelers for about 50% of all the doors, because we thought, well, the client may prefer some specific type of leveler to what we've got, but at least we can give them a leveler so that they can get operational and not have to wait 6 months to be operational in the building. So, we're doing some things like that. To Allison's point, you have to have the office basically done at shell completion. So you're back in your office built out 4 months into your shell finish, so that you're actually complete with your office and your shell at the same time. And I'm sure that's kind of the end goal and that facilitates the tenants' needs to get in quicker.
I'll move over to, our favorite subject in the development, which is land. Maybe it's our raw material. So, just kind of curious, where are you finding land, and what are you looking for in land? And more than that, what are you looking for land contracts? Who are the sellers that you make it work for you? And then interact that with, I have a piece of land, and obviously we build a building on it, you have to figure out the cost of building, so interacting that with what Graybill does every day, how does that all work? Bill, you want to say stuff on that?
Sure. Fortunately, we're land poor. So the one thing to happen is when you go back 18 months and land escalations were 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 bucks a foot. And if you're sitting on that land today, it's impossible to make a deal. That's all it is. So right now, what we're doing is we've been very fortunate. We're now picking up drop sites that other developers have dropped. And now this is the time we want the most sophisticated sellers we can, because they understand the market dynamics and where pricing is going. So they're willing to cut their price to meet the market to where you can get into land. So there are land sites out there now that are really good land sites that we're just trying to evaluate and see where that land seller is going to be as far as the pricing goes. A lot of folks, that still want to live in what I'll call the last cycle, which is gone, where land prices are much higher than what they can do today to make a deal work. And maybe a lot of people here will have to wait for the next cycle. I'm not sure we're going to see another cycle where we had the last 3 or 4 years.
So, very similar perspective that Bill has on, you need a land seller that understands the marketplace. I think what he's saying is what I'm doing too, is trying to find land that needs a little work, and therefore you get some time. We just have a developed site with utilities, with zoning in place. It's hard to get any time from anybody at any price, quite frankly. And it's hard to pay the price they want and make it build a pencil. So it's about figuring out the path of growth, and our little business at Colliers Partners, we're focused on the path of goods movement, and in Dallas-Fort Worth, it's because it's I-35 and I-20. Just like everybody else, I'm marching up and down those 2 highways, looking for sites that are in the path of growth that maybe can be done. Maybe there's some water in the U.S. or floodplain or entitlements or utilities, right? And trying to make a hard site work and try to get it a little cheaper because we're willing to spec our time. And maybe it doesn't work out, so I'm taking more risk, and I expect they are too on sites that are a little longer shot than we would have taken 12 months ago, because we have the time, and the market's going to allow us to spend that time cultivating sites that aren't necessarily buildable today.
John, I would just say, in the big scheme of things, your costs of construction, hard costs, soft costs, are sort of predetermined by where we are in the market right now. The one variable that can change to make a deal actually pencil is the cost of the land, right? And that's the last thing it usually wants to correct, because all the sellers are in denial, to your point. So you're saying if you have a sophisticated seller, they get that, they understand that. So part of the job of the developers to help educate the land seller on the reality of the economic situation. And part of what we've done to be successful in doing that, I think, is really try to develop a relationship with the land seller, and so that they trust us when we tell them that this is not going to happen in 90 days. Okay, we don't need 90 days. We need 120 days minimum, to get started on this project and get to the point at which we're able to close, because the financing takes longer. All the approvals through the city take longer. And so, to the extent you can be honest with your seller and gain their trust, then it's more of a partnership, right? And trying to get that in and create that value in the land for them. So anyway, that's an approach we've used that's pretty effective.
And Brad, as a quick comment, I think the ability to do that is driven partially by there's not 50 people knocking on that door trying to tell them a different story than the facts, right? There's a little scarcity now on the line in front of the door.
I'll add one more. and it just goes back to the market. So DFW having 75 million square feet, and you kind of ask yourself why, and you look at the national trend, and this is why industrial will be doing DFW for a long time. If you look at the Inland Empire, which used to be the king of industrial, they have 0.2 of a point vacancy rate right now. And I think if you look at the stats that are out there, almost 50% of the communities that are in the Inland Empire have now placed a moratorium on any more industrial. So what's that done is that it's now focusing a lot of development in Las Vegas and in Phoenix and now in Dallas. There's a shift in where goods are coming in. Last year, Port of Los Angeles and Long Beach were king. All right. New York City overtook them last year. And so what you're seeing is goods coming in from different areas. And Mexico is a huge beneficiary of it. So what people are looking at is that DFW is now the center of the donut where they can get everything. So that's a good bodes well. But it's also, I think I lost 4 zoning cases last year from communities from neighbors not wanting it to city councils not wanting industrial in it. So it was great to hear the cities that were here today that they want industrial. But it gets harder with what these gentlemen are saying. Everybody says it gets harder and harder to get your project through the zoning process.
Thanks. And Frank, I'm curious from your company standpoint. Obviously, as developers, we see a piece of land with the best piece of land in the last biggest piece of land in the United States. And they all have that happen every week. But we have to call you guys for pricing to figure out what the hell is going to cost to build. Are those calls picking up, or are they slowing down, or what kind of your interaction from the developers from the pre-dev part of your world?
Yeah, so I think we're getting a lot more active in budgeting. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there. I will say from a contractor's perspective, when we're talking about land, that's the hardest thing for us to project cost. Just because of the unknowns of the land and the characteristics of the dirt, the characteristics of the infrastructure, all of those things. And that could be, we're trying to put our empirical data, we get our fancy spreadsheets out, and we bust a number by $3, you're not gonna be very happy. And then I have to try to figure out a way to get through that meeting. But I would say that from a demand standpoint, I think there's a lot of opportunity out there in the industrial world. It's very competitive. The DFW market and the contractors that we have here in the industrial space is pretty deep. And we're happy to be a part of those lists, but it can get pretty competitive for sure.
Bill touched on this, but I want to expand on it a little bit. When we started, Brad, I started business 4 years ago. We always call it as of right land for entitlements. That is not true anywhere in the United States. In Dallas, Houston, used to be pretty darn easy. You find the land, you close on it in 30 days, you start construction 35 days later, the building is up in 9 months. So curious, and I want to also have Allison jump in when it comes to entitlements and approvals and special uses for tenants. So what are you guys dealing with now? You kind of look back at your experience, what you used to deal with. Entitlements process. I mean, we've got some great economic development people in the room, and they're wonderful to work with. But sometimes their city councils aren't as amenable to us as the economic development guys. And there's little things like the guy says, "There's an election coming up. I really can't vote for that right now. Wait until May." Things like that don't mean anything, but it really matters to us. So curious, guys, what do you guys see from the developer standpoint? And then now I'll go over to Allison. That's the relay for customers.
Yeah, I guess just re-echo. I mean, it just takes time. Yeah, there's a lot more prep work that goes into when you go make the presentation. You try to meet with an awful lot more people to get their buy-in to make sure they understand what your project is, and that goes everybody from all the city officials to the elected officials to the neighbors to anything you can to try to help the project get through. And then quite frankly, you know, as we always say, we're here to be a partner with cities that want us, that want these type of projects to be there. And, you know, a lot of times we just told them we don't want this. And so that's another reality that you have to deal with. And hopefully you get told early, so you don't spend a ton of money on your DD. But it's a lot more meetings, a lot more prep time going in before you really go into the vote.
I have a question. Said we could ask questions, right? So I'm going to ask a question that you guys can't really, I mean, you want to ask, but you can't. You talked about the cities. The cities are becoming increasingly restrictive. A lot of them, it's a lot of education. A lot of them want catchy things like mixed-use development and an old industrial field in a blue-collar community. They won't support the demographics. So once you find a site, and are you paying expediters to get through development plans and so forth? It's also political and glad-handing a little bit. It's taking extra time to present to the council your consideration. What are you having to do differently than 30 days closing and 35 days getting a permit? Both from entitlement, from planning, from your CM, the construction drawings and so forth. Is it completely different? And what, you may not want to share trade secrets, which I'm sure you're doing all the same thing.
As I say, our good mayor from Princeton gave us the answer. Go see what the city wants, right? Don't spend months training, because it's, again, in the days
it's a relationship.
Yeah, exactly, it is. And it used to be transactional. I mean, there's so much land in so many communities that want to grow, you could build. Now cities that are smaller in scale actually have vision that is being articulated through their council process and other cases that you watch. So it's not incumbent on us to be smart and go target our audience.
Sure, right, fair enough. Thank you.
This is just anecdotal, but we have one situation in the city where we did talk to every council person and had full buy-in like 24 hours before we were going to the zoning vote. And the next day or next night, we get there on time, really the only thing on the agenda, and it's an hour wait, right? Before the council comes in, the chamber, and then we get a 0 to 7 vote against the zoning. So, I mean, sometimes you just can never tell, right? Even if you're doing what you think is the right thing. Yeah, I think it was the mayor's, but in that case, it wasn't in Princeville. Anyway, I guess I'm trying to think if there was anything else that we could touch on. We have hired expediters. We've tried that. I don't feel like it expedited anything, frankly. They supposedly are politically connected in that area with city attorneys and so forth, but again, I haven't seen any official improvement on the time. So while we are doing that, I haven't seen great results from that. And in fact, when you ask the staff, when you're on your comment call, review plans, for example, on civil comments, they'll say, hey, we appreciate the fact that this is the 4th round of comments that you guys have been through, and there's really only one correction to be made on the plans. Well, why does it take another 20 days to get a response back if we just know it's one and we're on the phone right now, we just fixed it? They said, well, we can't really put you guys ahead of somebody else's staff. That really wouldn't be fair. So we'll commit to 20 days. Okay? So that's kind of what we're dealing with, even when you're trying to do the right thing and be the nice guy and check all the boxes, and we still have similar results. And it's very frustrating. And we're on the board today out, and that's something we're trying to address as an organization, is how do we bring that in to a certain extent? And unfortunately, it's like municipality by municipality, because they're all different. And they're all, I'm not throwing everybody under the bus here at all. It's just city by city, municipality by municipality. You just got to go in and work it the best you can. I'm sorry, go ahead.
The city of Lavon and Lavon EDC, there's flyers on the table. We have 80 acres. And so it's just, let's go and see it.
How long does it take to get a zoning and a permit done.
I'll make a little comment to this, and that's it. What we're finding is we are very good at marketing industrial land, but when you dig into it, we're finding more and more heartburns when it comes to utilities or whatever it may be. So I'm throwing this out for all the cities. If you are south of Fort Worth or in Fort Worth, you need a sterilization plant, ETO sterilization plant, all oxide. So bringing your land sites. And what I'll say is we're really good at marketing, hey, this is industrial, and then I'll go call the utility for the city, and they're like, no, we're at capacity, or you have to put another tower, or whatever it might be, and then who's gonna pay for that? And that's been the biggest challenge, is that gonna be the tenant, the developer, or the city? And so we are finding, it can be industrial land, but when you dig under that ground, I'm finding a lot more issues when I'm calling the utility guys, because they're telling you a totally different story. So I think that's been a big, big struggle for us, but also the timing and just the heartburn for the tenants, because they're working with, for us, we're working with developers, and so we're hoping that it gets approved. And just the strong opinions in the room do get to be a little bit of a difficulty, because we've wasted a whole lot of time for us, and now we're having to go find something else or whatever it might be. So, anyway, so.
One thing I want to touch on before we're almost done, is redevelopment. I mean, it was mentioned earlier in Carrollton, we all saw the Halliburton deal, and that price was just off the charts, and I am so happy for Colliers to own that land, and not us, because the pricing is done. But what about redevelopment? Infill redevelopment has been really where the capital is. You can get capital for that. We're doing one right now in Atlanta. We're doing one right now in Orange County, California, and we're doing one in Chicago. And that money's available. The numbers work. It's hard as heck to get done. So if you're curious, in Dallas area, you guys are spending time on that, and what's it look like in the landscape?
Okay, I will tell you, we have not focused on that much. And part of the reason is that most of the infill sites are fairly small. In Dallas, historically, in the older districts, like down on Stevens Corridor and that kind of area, where we have some of the older infill that would be good for that last mile type delivery space in smaller spaces, the cost per foot in those markets are still relatively low from a rental standpoint. I know they're going up, and they may be getting to the point now where it makes sense. Down the last time I looked at it, I couldn't make sense of the economics of what the rents they were achieving, the cap rates where they were, what you'd have to buy that asset for, and scrape it and do something different with it. Now, if there's a play on, maybe raising the roof or doing some other modifications to it that might work, I'll leave that open to somebody else on the panel, but we have not pursued that mainly because the size of the transaction and what I perceive as a lack of return.
The opportunity to lose a lot of time is very, very high. So I've looked at a few things, even this morning, looking at a different use. One would traditionally think it's a higher use than industrial, and debating with somebody, maybe we could buy this cheap per square foot, low enough to be a good land buy on industrial. 20 minutes later, I said, see you later, no thanks, it's not gonna work. It's just so complicated, and the capital required is big. And then there's, talk about politics fitting industrial zoning is one thing, but down zoning to industrial, or it's just, you have to be aligned with the city wishes to do something.
I'll just say ditto. I can tell folks that it doesn't surprise me. Dallas really doesn't work because the rents are $5, $6, $7, but we're doing it in northern New Jersey where the rents are $15, and we're just signing a lease in Southern California, Orange County site. It's the same rent it was when I started. It's $2 a foot. Unfortunately, it's $2 a month. So do that math, and that works. And so I think will it happen in Dallas? Yeah, I think it will. But it may be 2 more years. And we've raised roofs, like in New Jersey. And have you guys ever raised any roofs, Ranger, in your career? Probably not in Dallas, but other places.
Not that I can think of, no, sir.
We just sold a building, and the user
you who bought it, you still sold the building, you two bought it, it's raising the roof. For a call-up.
It works in certain markets. We did one and we collaborated in New Jersey. That was really fun. And then everybody could have bought that building.
What does that
No one
cost?
figured it out. Cost us about $10, $12 a foot. And the building was rented for about $5 or $6, and we when we were done, we rented it at 12. The numbers really work well.
John, can I ask Ellison a question? Earlier, Bill said that rents today are $550, and a year from now, they're going to be $650. Are your tenants going to pay that?
If you look at the historic numbers for rents, based upon absorption, it doesn't, it continues to go up. So absorption is still, I mean, in 2021, absorption was way over by the, what buildings were there. 2022, it settled down a little bit, but absorption was still high and rents were getting a little bit insane. I'd like to question back, are we gonna stop dart throwing as far as where the rents are? Because I can't back out the math and make sense of it. I really feel like it's just like a game of darts for rents. But no, I think tenants are gonna have, they're gonna have to. Improvements are part of that increasing, but I think it's gonna settle. I can't see that, being the case, but I just want the dart gun to stop.
I'll argue against you.
But I think what you're saying is the demand remains.
Yeah, I think when you look at, and I'll take it from a national perspective, when you look at the DFW market, we are still an inexpensive market in comparison to what you see across the country. And so rent going from $550 to $650 or to $7 in DFW, the fortunate part about industrial real estate is that they're all most of them are national tenants. So they'll still look at us as a relatively economical market. And it's just a fact that, okay, I can't give you $550 because I can't make money at $550, so I won't build. That'll end up, that's where it's kind of done.
And another thing to that is labor and taxes are a big benefit to here, but something interesting that I read somewhere is that Dallas-Fort Worth is the #1 market for rich millennials to move to. So for whatever that means and whatever jobs they are, I'm really hoping that helps, because when we look at overall the increase, the labor is becoming a big problem, as and taxes are now also starting to increase too, just by being a hot commodity city. So everything is starting to raise, but
I think we're at the end of our time, so anybody want to ask questions? Otherwise, we'll thank these folks for.
How's everybody doing today? Pencils down, sorry. Time with our panel. How's everybody doing? Doing great. Well, I know while we have a full room and everybody's still sticking around, obviously the godfather of industrial is up on the panel today, so he needs no introduction. But let's first start out by letting everybody say just a quick couple words about who you are, who you work for, what you do, and then we'll jump into the questions.
Thank you. My name is Dick Russell, and I'm with MMR Realty Advisors, based here in Carrollton. And the past 45 years in real estate, commercial mortgage banking, commercial real estate, done some development around town, senior living space, assisted living space, retail. Apartments is where we specialize most of our mortgage banking in. And just got in at 10 a.m. this morning, so everybody from San Diego prep. So, I give you my last win, I gotta go home sometime.
How you doing? My name is John Matier, and Market Officer for Development Industrial in the Central Region. So based here in Dallas, we're a real estate private equity company and developer. Operate about 40 million square feet nationally, with another 20 million square feet.
I'm Seth Koshak. I work for Stream Realty Partners. We're a fully integrated commercial real estate company focusing primarily on office and industrial. I've been with Stream for 14 years in the DFW market and currently lead our industrial capital markets team.
And I'm Jack Fraker. I'm currently kind of a free agent. I was with CBRE for a long time and have been in the industrial real estate business since the Old Testament. So it really goes back a long time. And I'm glad to try to learn some things today listening to these guys.
Hi, Kelly Williams. I'm from Houston, Texas, and from Waco originally. We're performing tax transactional lawyer. Been in the private equity business since 2000, and started a company last year called Bridgeco, which is an alternative private real estate industrial financing source between banks and hard money lenders.
Outstanding. Thanks guys for giving everybody a quick intro. Well, to say the least, if we were all sitting here a year ago today, the world was completely different in the capital markets. If there's one piece of volatility, I would say, in the industrial sector, it is the capital markets. And to say that there's been quite some change over the last, really, call it 9 months is an understatement in the capital markets world. So I hope you guys learned a lot from this, what's really happening in this space, because probably the other sectors I wasn't here just talked about how great everything still is, and it certainly is in the leasing perspective. There's still a lot of demand out there, but the capital markets have certainly gotten choppy, to say the least. So we're just going to kind of round robin everybody, jump in as you see fit. But I guess the first thing we're going to talk about is what is going on in the capital markets. Where are we seeing cap rates today? And any recent transactions that we can talk about. So who would like to jump in first? Mr. Koshak?
I'll kick us off. No doubt right now there's more turmoil today than we've seen in a long time, coming off the heels of last year. I think the anomaly in the market is you've got, for the first time maybe in history, this major disconnect between the capital market side of the business and the leasing demand. The leasing demand continues to be strong, maybe not what it was at the peak, but still definitely there, but it is very disconnected from our side of the business. And so with that being said, we have, I think, as we've entered 2023, there's a little bit of a different feel in the air. There's some anxiousness, I think, setting in on these folks that have money in place. We've always been compared and been maybe a golden child with the multifamily side of the business, and we're seeing some pause on that side of the business, and folks may be slowing down there, and industrial continues to be the target that folks want to invest in. And so all of that is really positive. It's always just been a pricing exercise of getting sellers to a point where they're having to forget that the market was a 3.5 cap market and the amount of money that they maybe lost, but they still are in good position to sell, and the capital is trying to get there. So I think activity is starting to pick up. It's still not, it's a fraction of what it was before the interest rate hikes came here or got to us, but we're optimistic that this year will be a little bit of a growing year again, and sellers and buyers will come back together and try to get deals done. Jack, would you like to chime in on that?
Yeah, so I'll say a few words. The asset class is the most popular asset class in the world, and it's the same for the United States. Unfortunately, there's a lot of arithmetic that goes into the analysis that an investment committee considers. And like Seth said, interest rates change so fast overnight, and really well-conceived development projects that have a Argus model, financial model, that backed up from the expected exit cap. A lot of that math changed right before the eyes of the developer. So they might have put together a very low yield on cost for the original development model, expecting to have an exit cap at the end, and then none of that arithmetic worked out during the course of 2022. It is coming back now, and/or investors are changing their expectations. Like Seth said, this is the first time really ever that you've had such strong fundamentals. And since I did say I've been doing this since the Old Testament days, we would always have a financial model that would show a rental rate growth of 3% per year. And most of the time that never happened. For 20 years in a row, the cumulative rental rate growth in Dallas-Fort Worth might have been 3% cumulatively. And now you're looking at rental rate growth in these submarkets that are 5, 7, 9%, and it really is happening. And it's driven by the fundamentals, it's driven by overused expression with e-commerce and online shopping changed our sector forever. And from a CIO's perspective, if you're a CIO of a pension plan, it's the best asset class. It's got reliable, predictable returns. You have 5 or 10 year lease contracts, which usually transcend economic cycles. And so somebody can count on that income coming in. Doesn't cost very much to do tenant improvements on a renewal. So that's far better than if you had an office building in Manhattan, which the TIs might cost $200 a square foot. So it's just a really good asset class from an investment perspective. I mean, I'm glad I've got 35 more years in the business that I can capitalize on it.
Yeah, to that point, Jack, I mean, being that, industrial is, one of the best asset classes out there in terms of, just real estate groups right now, right? We don't have the remote work that office is dealing with, which, structurally changing the fundamentals, that as an asset class. And because of that, you have a lot of buyers that really do want to transact. I can tell you, we're definitely one of them. I mean, we're looking at, what does our 2023 look like? And we invest on behalf of a discretionary fund. And, we're in the middle of a fundraise right now. And I can say, there's a ton of capital that wants to be in our sector. And it's because the fundamentals are strong. I mean, one of the questions we get asked a lot when we're capital raising, is leasing still strong? You guys have already heard it is. And it's kind of mind-boggling. But to that, it's really the change in interest rates that are making things difficult, right? It's not really the level of interest rates. Cap rates are cyclical, right? I mean, none of us know, what our exit cap is really going to be when we plug it in, 5 years away, in our model, right? But when you can get back, to the fundamentals, right, and you're buying good quality real estate, good location that's functional, the hope is, that it's going to work out. But to the point, I mean, it's difficult because we're all there's two sides of it right now. There's interest rates are going up, and there's another side where people are optimistic that the Fed is going to start cutting rates at some point in the future, especially if you got inflation starting, what looks like it's starting to come down. I think what some people are missing is that even last month's inflation number is still 3 times what the Fed's target is. We still have interest rates in the economy that aren't restrictive, and even when they get to the point that they are restrictive, and inflation actually does come back down closer to the Fed's target level, whether that's 2% or they change it to 3%, whatever it ends up being. Cutting interest rates, right, is only going to rekindle that inflation fire, right? So what actually ends up happening with interest rates, I think, is all speculative, right? None of us really know. So from our perspective, we're just trying to focus on fundamentals and get back to the real estate basics of buying real estate.
Those are all good points. We just came out of, as I said, from San Diego this morning for our Craft MBA conference. And we had some of the smarter guys than I, Bank of America, JP Morgan, CMI, Citibank, all the agencies, Freddie, Fannie, and HUD. And at the end of the day, the traditional banking institutions have the attitude today that when it comes down to construction capital, they are kowtowing, I give the Texas term to use, to those existing customers. They're not really looking to put money at risk. Banks are solid, just wash your capital. Unless there is a ongoing banking relationship, they've been pretty clear at our conference the past 4 days that they're not running out there with sales team pumping money out into the streets. If they are, it is at such a low loan to the value of 50% that you might as well go ahead and raise a fund and just pay cash for it. But they're very cautious in that regard. With respect to where they see the economy going, as far as soft landing, buzzword that seems to be coming around a great deal, that seems to be the proverbial buzzword that we're seeing in the multi-banking community. Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and Citibank, all of the folks that we had a chance to visit with in the past 4 days have a pretty optimistic view that the Fed will probably move again with another 25 basis points, and there may be another 25 basis points, so that up before you see 5.5 pop up in front of you, will be sooner than later, where you'll see those spreads over silver will probably be somewhere in the 3 to maybe even 4 on a consistent basis. But still, this is one of the guys that still in money, that part is over with. Get that out of here. I don't know what kind of money you got. Still in money is over with. There's a cost. Sellers have got to adjust. That's a mindset that's going around like landlords who want to sell. We had a multi-family unit deal, $270 million coming out of winter of 21, right on into March of April of 22. We lost that deal. The price had to adjust by $50 million in order to make it work. As fast as rates were coming up, if you remember in June, July, and so on. Seller just made a decision. I'm not selling. We've got 14,000 units of plenty of stuff to sell. They're just not going to do it. So until the mindsets change on that side of the equation, the other side, as far as those that get buying, you just got to understand there's no more free money. But nonetheless, deals can get done. They got to get underwritten correctly. That's what we look at, underwriting piece of it.
Thanks, guys. I'd just like to point out that since Jack did step away from CB, cap rates have only gone one way. So he's actively talking to Chairman Powell, and we're working on pushing those back down. Okay. So next question, I know there's a lot of volatility. There's not a lot of deal velocity right now, but who is actively buying? Is it institutional? Is it a lot of private or family wealth offices? What are you guys seeing out there from a transaction perspective? Who's kind of the most active today?
He gets a chance to say something. That's my strategy. My strategy is to be on the end all the time, where I really don't have to answer any questions or talk. So yeah, I agree with everything you just said. I'm always a big believer in the flight to quality, and Texas is on fire. Different parts of Texas are on more fire than others, but it's clear that all of Texas is on fire. So there's tons of institutional money looking at Texas, both short-term and long-term. And I think from a short and long-term perspective, we have a great outlook, right? Different drivers for Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin. I was giving a talk in Austin last week for Red News. Thank you very much, April. It's interesting to see the different drivers of different cities because they're all different. Houston has oil and gas, and I was in Austin last week. Oil and gas never came up. They didn't talk about industry. They talked about technology. And here you talk about logistics, distribution, semiconductors, things like that. So different large metroplexes have different drivers, which is great. Again, lots of institutional money coming into Texas, lots of institutional money coming into Austin, in particular Dallas Fort Worth. Cap rates, the one thing I'll say about cap rates is they don't always statistically or historically follow interest rate increases, especially when you're in an insulated environment like we are here in Texas. And we're lucky to be in Texas, right? Economic climate's great. So I don't expect cap rates to be increasing like they are in other parts of the world, other parts of the country, mainly because there's so much money and so much growth being driven in these top cities in Texas.
I'll just make a brief comment about the active buyers, and we all know the volume was way down this year. So for me personally, I didn't miss that much being a free agent. There were not as many transactions. And this is an overused expression, but we really did see it this year with the herd mentality. And I think the herd mentality, it's a biblical scripture. And Jesus cast Satan into a pig, and he ran off a cliff. And all the other pigs in that herd ran off that cliff too. So that's where herd mentality first came up. And it's the same in today's investment world. You know, Blackstone, I remember in March, let's say March of this year, Blackstone used the expression, which hadn't been used in 10 years, pencils down. So when people heard that Blackstone was putting its pencil down, everybody said, well, we got to be, Blackstone's so smart, we got to be just like them. So everybody stopped buying things in the first quarter of the last year. That was probably, not the volume from last year was heavily weighted towards the first half of last year. The volume's been way down since that time. And part of it also is driven by the expression, the denominator effect. So the CIOs, it's like they just make their decisions based on a formula. So if the stock market goes down, they look over the rest of their portfolio, and they might accidentally have too much of a percentage of their portfolio in real estate. When they should be doubling down on real estate, they look at what's called the denominator effect. The real estate's too big of a percentage of their overall investments. So they start selling down real estate. So that happened, this happened a lot in 2022. The buyers are starting to come back, and all of the overseas buyers, we used to do a lot of business with Mapletree, Capital Land, GIC, all these Asian investors, certainly all the Canadian investors were dominating the market in 21, 22. And those guys all, followed the herd as well. They all sat on the sidelines in 2022. They're probably going to start coming back now. And then I'll say one last thing. And then big deals were better in 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16. Portfolios had a quantifiable premium associated with every one of those portfolio sales. And then now it's actually the reverse. So it might be a sum of the parts solution for a big real estate owner might be better than a portfolio. And part of it is also due to debt, which he was talking about earlier. Debt's hard to get in general, and it's very hard to get for really big deals.
Yeah, I'd add on to that with, for years, whatever deal profile was being marketed or out in the market for sale, it had the same similar profile of buyers, right? It was large, it was institutional only, it was smaller, maybe it was the one-off high net worth guy or the family office. That dynamic has shifted dramatically. So now you've got, because of where pricing is, because of the pencils down mentality that Jack's referring to, you've got really quality deals out there that have, that the buyers for those deals kind of run the whole gamut. So you've got the family office world has, if you think they can't compete, that's a mistake, because there's so much family office money out there. Their return profiles are different. They're not focused on, they can think more long-term minded, and so they can definitely compete, and that's what you've seen. So you've always had this classification of buyers for each profile deal, and that's gotten very gray. It's very, very different today. So one unique thing we've seen in the market is a lot of the Class A, what would historically and traditionally classified as core, the Class B buyers have never been able to buy that. You've seen those guys step up and start to pick off a few assets or a few parks, or business parks, or what have you, portfolios. And really their thesis behind it has been, I own X million square feet of Class B, and I'm going to go pick off another million feet or what have you of Class A, and all of a sudden the overall quality of my portfolio has just elevated. So let's run that forward 5 years when they exit that portfolio. Let's just say they're neutral or break even on the Class A. Well, the overall portfolio lift of 10, 15, 20 basis points that's added to their Class B portfolio, all of a sudden that's a dramatic and very meaningful lift on their overall portfolio. So we've seen that several times occur several times last year in 2022 with some groups that are picking off some stuff and taking advantage of. Last year you were lucky to get an offer, much less multiple offers, and so it was a time where those folks or the family office, same scenario, could step up and buy really, really quality assets that were being pushed out for one reason or another. So different time today, and it will likely revert back at some point, but right now it's due to the pricing discovery that the institutions are still looking for and looking for data points. Until data points come out, they're going to be very slow to move.
Let me give you a quick analogy while we're at the conference. Blackstone, some of you may have heard or have read trades in the last it's probably about December, Jonathan Gray, who runs Blackstone, they were fortunate enough to get $4 billion from CalPERS. And that's just like that's a blowaway number for most of us in this room, at least for me. But nonetheless, the sidebar conversation we had, primarily the reason is that Blackstone, they were writing blank checks, as we all know, through the course of the last 48 months. And, wherever you were at, Blackstone, if you're competing bidding on something, I'm sure you probably didn't win. Or if you did win, you paid more than what, the guys in real estate would allow you, but you just wanted to get the deal. They're paying CalPERS 11.5% is the guaranteed yield that they got to pay them for that $4 billion. Let that be a lesson that at the end of the day, if Blackstone is paying somebody 11.5% for the money, they've got a whole team of people who've got to make $500,000 a year, this, that, and another, go to South Boston and run it around. That money has got to get out there somewhere at 14, 15%. They are very willing right now to loan anybody a bunch of money at 15%. At some participatory rate, it may be 7, but at the end of the day, it'll look like 20. That is the kind of things that are going on in the capital markets. There's plenty of money out there, but the cost of what the entity is, i.e. the mortgagee, if you want to put it in that perspective, or your mezzanine financing, or your partner in the transaction, they're getting a pound of flesh. And everything that has been said prior to this today, as it relates to Dallas being number 1 or number 2 in the country, it was the most talked about city at a conference with 3,200 people. So feel good. It's not going to be cheap. As long as we got 100,000 jobs coming here a year, and on the radar screen of Park Avenue in New York City and Wall Street, we'll do real well. But it ain't going to be a cheap ride. We've got a hotel that's here in town, and the owner of it put it up for auction. Senior gentleman, a little bit older than I, a lot older than I, had a junior partner, maybe my age. They have about probably 25, 26 million cash in the development of this asset. At the end of the day, they put it up for sale. The senior partner decided he wanted to retire. They sold it for $6 million on December 22nd. Closes probably another week or so into this month anyway. But his skittishness about where to put another $40 million cash into building out this hotel that had a Marriott flag. And HBS said the property is stabilized value of $100 million. That's a 2x. But he made a decision to drop $24 million or $6 million and walk. And that's cash. So, at the end of the day, you gotta look for some deals where it's around. There's plenty of money around, but if you can find where there are some disconnections that are on the other side of the trade, such as that hotel that's here in town, then you can do well in these kinds of expensive capital. And Blackstone will do good at letting it, I guarantee you. Jonathan Gray is a very smart man.
So speaking of cap rates, just to give you guys a quick overview, a year ago today, we were, for Class A industrial institutional product, we were hovering plus or minus 3% on our cap rates. Today, can't really get rid of buildings for 5.5, so we've gone up 2.5 basis points. But the biggest thing right now is we really don't even know where we are on cap rates because there's very few deals trading. It's hard to have comparables in today's world. So anyhow, that's a quick cap rate overview for you guys. Obviously, with the volatility in the marketplace right now, I call it, there's an education process going on. There's a massive disconnect between buyers and sellers out there. What impact are you seeing on rates driving these deals, and where are you seeing the debt markets right now? John, maybe you can speak a little bit on this.
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to what I said earlier, right? You got a group of people that are convicted that interest rates are going to go up, and they're going to normalize, but they're going to stay relatively, I hate to use the word high, but higher than what we were accustomed to over the last, 24 months. And then you have, sellers who see, the leasing fundamentals are still so strong that when they can't get the same number that, they were being offered a year ago, naturally, for them, it's a better opportunity to lease the building and hold it, especially if they have, in place debt that, is much cheaper than, what it would cost today. Question ends up being, what happens when they have to refinance that debt at some point in the next couple of years. And I think, that's where the optimism that rates are going to come down at some point in the future comes in. So we'll all see, how that actually plays out. I think, for us to really get back to a point where buyers and sellers can transact, we just need some stabilization in rates. I think if, it's not from a buyer's standpoint, whether rates are 2% or 7% doesn't make a difference if we can all agree that they're 7% and we can all agree that a valuation has to be based on rates that are 7%. Then buyers and sellers can come back together. There's less disparity in bid-ask spreads.
I want to make one cap rate comment, and it goes back to John Gray that they were talking about. And this is a deal that we were working with him 3 or 4 years ago, and he told his acquisitions officer, I want you to win this deal, but do not go below a 4% cap rate. And so Blackstone has a meeting every Monday morning, and so they had a meeting Monday morning, and John Gray said, what happened to that deal that you were bidding on? And he goes, well, it went for a 3.98 cap. And you told me not to go below 4. Because, well, I was hoping you might have used some executive discretion there. You should have grabbed that deal. It's close enough to 4. Because if you're landing a spaceship on Mars, you've got to have every 2,500 numbers to the right of the decimal point have to be correct. If you're buying a warehouse, you could fudge something in your underwriting. You don't have to be that precise. And that's still true today. I mean, the underwriting is changing right before people's eyes. The rents are going up. One more thing on John Gray, because it kind of ties into our industry, and he needed $4.5 billion and paid a high return because he had redemption queues. And so that's going on. John Q. Public Citizen owns shares in B-REIT. Big institutions own shares in B-REIT, and they want to get their money back. So he had to come up with a lot of cash in a hurry. So that's almost a usurious rate, pay somebody 11.5, although it was levered, 11.5% return. But he needed the money, and that's true for all the big institutions in our business. They have redemption queues lining up, and that's driving our sales volume as well.
One last thing, we'll quit beating the cap rate horse to that there, but in my mind, they could be very misleading. So prior to the pandemic, when, as Jack mentioned a minute ago, the cumulative rent growth may be 3% over a period of time. Today, with modern day rent growth, what buyers are looking for is the ability to get out of negative leverage, and so the cap rate is really based on 2 things. It's based on your rent growth, and it's going to be based on your wall. How quickly can you get to that rent roll? For years, we all were accustomed to longer term deals are better. Longer term deals are better. Sign the 10-year deal, sign the 20-year deal, whatever you can do. But today, from the institutional mindset, from the investors in our space, it's completely contrary to common belief in the sense that they want, if you're over 5 years, your pricing is automatically going to start being affected, and not in a good way. And so the ability to look at what percentage under market, let's just say you got a 500,000 square foot building that's going to market, they got 2 years left on their rent, or on their lease, and they're 40% below market, versus a brand new developed building that's got a 10-year lease on it, and they're at market. Those are going to be priced very different from a cap rate standpoint. And so we talk a lot about cap rate. That's our job. That's what we respond to a lot of. But it's really the stabilized yield is where people are solving to, and that's what people are focused on, is how can I get to that rent? The market for the first time in history, outside coming out of the pandemic, we're seeing 3.5%, 4% now, even 4.5% type rent growth, maybe even 5% in some of the tier 1 markets of DFW and certainly in other parts of the country. And so that's what people are focused on, and maybe that'll be our last capital call.
Are we done with that? All right. Speaking of rent growth, the average logistics tenant's total rent obligation is typically 4% of their entire operational budget. A 20% raise in the rent only raises that 1%. So when we really talk about rent growth, it doesn't impact the bottom line as a lot of folks would think. So I think there's going to be areas that there could be some softening in lease rates, where there might be some overbuilding. There's a couple areas in DFW, but then those other areas I see there could be this continued pace of rapid rent growth. Did a post the other day talked about, I grew up in the Bellwood submarket, and if you're looking for over 200,000 square feet between Bellwood and north of the airport up to Louisville, this does not include Denton. There are 2 options on the ground over 200,000 square feet. That's unbelievable to me. Yeah, so that just shows you how tight the market is from availability for infill type space out there. All right, enough with me and my tenant rep background. All right, where do you guys see interest rates topping out? What do you think is going to happen with the Fed, and when do you think they might start lowering rates down?
For sure, let me answer that. Powell is not going to let up off of this handle. I'm telling you, it's going to be 25 and 25. You can bake that into wherever you buy it right now, or sell it. 24, as we just got advised through the course of this past 7 days, I would think that the earliest you see anything, he's come up on, and this is what we were very critical about saying, he's come up on this jobs deal. Unemployment rate is 3.4. For some reason, the Fed has this metric that they're counting. Unemployment needs to get to 4.8, 4.9 before they say, we don't understand. I mean, you talk about a delta that's got to happen. The stuff that been laying off 10,000 and 20,000 that you've seen. So, Jamie Woodall is one of the accountants for the Mortgage Bankers Association, the commercial side, which gives us a lot of insight. And we just can't figure this out why the Fed is on that. They just had a Federal Reserve person to resign, I think just yesterday, in the last 24 hours, to the White House. The part of this disconnect was that she was more on the side of, we've done what we've done, we need to back off. Well, inflation with the Federal Reserve, you don't hear about a lot, but it's starting to show up. So how we see things in 24 is probably the earliest that we'll see some pullback, unless all of a sudden we see 3.4 turns into, some crazy number like 4.5. And there's, God, because Altus, I guess, if it jumps that fast or it jumps that far. So we don't see it happening anytime soon. Price of money is going to be the price of money. As I said earlier, SOFR, where you look at 10-year treasury, 350 is where in and around the probably stay. We might see some softness at 335, 365, but idea spreads out to the bank areas that you're doing business with. You can sort of make that into the numbers. And at the end of the day, hopefully, all things come to pass, and that we'll get past these next 2 pops, and then be done with it. I mean, literally, that's what we were advocating at the time. Is that you get your way over these next 2 pops, but after that, man, you got to stop. Because there's no sense in trying to just put everybody in harm's way and waiting on 4.8. That doesn't make any sense.
He wants to say something. Oh, I do. It's a tough balance, right? I mean, I wouldn't want that job at all, right? You can't please everybody. It's like being on the city council. Somebody's always going to be complaining.
it is a tough metric when you have this unemployment number. It's different. We haven't had that before. Maybe that has something to do with baby boomers, I'm not sure, but they're going to have to change the calculations when it comes to measurement. Just going to have to live with a low unemployment number. There'll be another quarter point pop in March, and there'll be another quarter point pop in May. After that, I think this will be a tepid environment. Will interest rates go down toward the end of the year? It depends. Some people think we're in a recession, some people think we're going through a recession, some people don't think any recession, right? Depends on which side of the aisle you're on and how you do your math. But what I do know is it's going to be, this year is kind of like what I call intermission. We had a red hot market. We're in intermission. We're going to figure out whether economics work or don't work in this environment. If they don't work, wait till next year. Money's going to be a little more expensive. Sensitivity analysis is going to have to do with your financial models, like Jack alluded to. Sometimes your models don't work. What I hate to have happen is to be renewing a loan in this environment, because that'd be really tough, because you may be searching around trying to find a place for your loan. So unfortunately, that's bad timing for whoever's loan renews. There is money out there. There's always money out there. Interest rates 15 years ago were the same amount, right? So all these young people out there, which does not include me and Jeff, it's not a high interest rate. It's just interest rate, right? So toward the end of 23 and probably the beginning of 24, the Fed will probably start reducing those interest rates again. That's my 2 cents.
I'm going to add one comment about the unemployment rate, which if you really look at the numbers closely, or what the numbers are really saying, yes, it's 3.45%. Fed wants a higher unemployment rate. I hope this comes out of the headlines soon. But big companies that are paying 6-figure salaries to their employees, they're laying off people. And so if somebody gets laid off from Cisco or Google out in California, but they get a job at Jack in the Box or Walmart. So the overall national unemployment rate might not change a lot, but the incomes of these workers is changing.
Yeah, I got to be careful what I say here, because I think I'm going to get set something out to try and sell me something. I think the talk about when interest rates come down. I mean, I think the reality is when interest rates do start coming down, if they start coming down, it's not going to be because the Fed just wants to lower interest rates. It's going to be them responding to a bad economic scenario. And everyone mentioned the Fed's focus on unemployment. It is a little perplexing. I think the Fed has really kind of hung their hat on this story that wage growth has caused inflation, and not necessarily us just printing tons and tons of money. I think we printed $8 trillion or something like that in the last 2 or 3 years. The reality is, when unemployment goes up, right, it means productivity goes down. When productivity goes down, you have less supply, and you still have the same amount of demand, just for cumulative inflation cycle. So I actually don't think that interest rates come down to any meaningful level that people are hoping for. I think right now, as I said, we're still not in a restrictive rate environment. I think we definitely have 2 more 25 basis point hikes. Probably have a few more after that. How large they are, when they actually occur, I don't know. I think as of right now, we've really only seen the effects of the first few Fed rate hikes. I mean, typically it takes 6 to 12 months for those hikes to actually play out throughout the economy. And the Fed only started hiking 12 months ago. So we're really only seeing the effects of the first 1 or 2 hikes. I think we're all speculating. If I had to make a guess, interest rates probably stabilize at some point in the next 2 years, kind of around where they are now.
I agree with that. I think the Fed 2 years ago, when every single family home was coming on the market and was getting 50 offers within 24 hours of hitting the market, that's when the Fed should have started some slight cooling. So a couple little hikes, 2 to 3 years ago would have cooled things a little bit, and we wouldn't have got ourselves into the situation that we came upon with the inflation, and then just the massive run up
and interest rates that we had last year was just, uncharted territory for everyone. We've never seen that before. We're running towards the end of the program here, so what I'd like to do is just kind of go through everybody one last time and kind of provide your parting thoughts of what you see happening for the rest of 23 and in the future, and Dallas-Fort Worth specifically.
I think we're probably unique in the United States of America. This area of the country, institutional investors are in love with all of us, I guess. We just had a phenomenon that we didn't go way off the tracks like Phoenix or Vegas, appreciation. We sort of learned from those of you that were around in the RTC days, when we had the debacle with the savings and loans. Even though 2008 came to pass, when the rest of the world was growing, like San Francisco and New York and my home back in Chicago, we still didn't see kind of a hit. And I don't see that happening, going forward for us here. The Carolinas is probably another very safe haven place that is there. But in general, I think that we're in good shape down here. We just do our job and do the right thing. Cost of money is going to be cost of money, like I said. Free money is over with. But deals can get done, and as several of the other panels have indicated, industrial square foot space here is probably cheaper than any place in the country. As long as we got jobs coming in at the rate that we do, 100,000 a year, and around that amount, we'll be good to go. And there is no more people bumping around, 50 people residential offering. That's down to, like, I went to a couple of houses. Yeah, a couple of houses, and just got people coming in. The realtor tells me that they got one offering that simply to sell it and pound it out versus 10 offers. So I think we're in good shape. Cost of capital is the cost of capital. We're probably the bell of the ball right now, and more than likely for the next, I say for the next 60 months. If I had to take a look at for the next 60 months, we're probably in good shape down here. But we just have not had the kind of hyperinflation that other parts of the country have had. And the amount of folks that are looking to come to this part of the country, especially this part of the state, it seems to be never ending. U-Haul can attest to that. Look at the U-Haul traffic that comes into the state. And number one is state of Texas, and again, 200-300 people that 1,100 to come to the state and staying right here. So we seem to be in good shape as far as our little backyard.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with all that. I think, regardless of what happens, we're probably not going to see it as bad as, some other parts of the country might see. I think Texas has, tons of pro-business policies in place that, we all see it every day, the amount of population moving here. I bought a house a year ago, and 5 houses on my block have sold since, and they're all people that moved here from California.
Here from Jersey, so
so I mean, the fundamentals are all there, and I don't see that getting disrupted or changing. I think we're still in one of the best asset classes. It's very hard to disrupt the need for warehouse space. This is just a bump in the road that we're all trying to navigate, and ultimately we'll come out on the other side and we'll figure it out.
Agree with all that. I think, as slow as the capital market business has been the last 12 months or so, there's no less of an appetite for our business and for our product type. It's been really just a pricing discovery. Nobody wanted to catch the falling knife and wanted to make sure that they got a pass. All the acquisitions guys last year, literally the investment officers were like, do not buy a thing, but you're staying employed. It was great. It was the best year of life. And so they got to do nothing. But again, to all the points that people have made, the interest rate hike, yes, that it affects everything as you underwrite deals. It affects our industry and beyond. But our product type in vogue is very important for just the overall economy and just the way we live our lives every day. And it will come back, and it will come. All it's going to take is sellers and buyers coming back together. It's like we mentioned earlier, it's never been this far apart. And so, I think just right now there's some really good buy opportunities, John, and there's some things that could be transacted at prices that you probably didn't expect them to be able to go off at. And, you know, there'll be some people take advantage of that, but I don't think there's this overlying fear that I have anyway, that things are going to be bad for a long time, just because, again, the one thing, and we're not the panel to talk about it, y'all heard it earlier, is the tenant demand fundamentals. They're there, they've powered through, you know, anybody bought a carton of eggs lately, you know that we are eating that cost. So they're passing those increased rental rates on to the end users. We're still a major discount to the coastal markets. I heard last night that there's a 1 million foot tenant renewing in Inland Empire, and they're coming off of a $6 rate. The first proposal out the door to them was an $18 net rate. So just you think about that and what that market's doing, and their inability to build all of that, and Jersey, just pick your coastal market, it doesn't matter, it's all the same, it's all happening everywhere. That just puts a lot of focus on DFW and North Texas, and just the fact that we still have good prices, and we're still a major discount to that. So we're optimistic, and I think this year will be a little bit more of a learning year for sure. But you know, hopefully towards the end of the year, things will maybe get back to normal.
And I can't really add too much to what they already said, but there is a lot of economics 101 going on. So I think at some point in time, in early 22, there were 118 companies that call themselves industrial developers in Dallas. And then that number has dropped now because they can't get development loans, and the arithmetic doesn't work on yield on cost versus exit cap. So there's going to be potentially a lot less supply of new buildings in 23, and that's going to go into 24. And at the same time, as Seth said, there's tremendous fundamentals and constant tenant demand. So from economics 101, more demand than supply is going to really affect lease rates. So lease rates will likely continue to increase, and investors that buy these buildings can expect their returns to be stable, reliable, predictable returns, and probably going up based on economics 101.
I love this part of the program because I get to make predictions like everybody else, but I never get quoted. This is really good. So last week in this Austin, I made a couple of predictions. One, I predicted Philly would win. Well, I lost that one. But I also predicted Tom Brady would stay retired, and he would not get back with Giselle. So those have yet to be determined. My next prediction is LeBron will play with his son in the U.S. Olympics. So I also like to make this public service announcement. I'm not a politician, but Texas has a great business climate, right? Would you all agree with that? Great business climate. We have great geography, all kinds of land, big buildings. We have great tax environment, low cost of living. But we also have a huge population growth, right? A lot of people from the left coast, right coast coming here. Don't bring your politics here because it's going to change our business climate. So, it didn't work on the left coast or the right coast, it ain't gonna work here. So, that's my public service announcement.
That was probably the best statement of the day. I think the overall resounding theme that you just heard from everybody up here is, you know, be glad you're in Texas, be glad you're in DFW. You know, the recession that we are in, maybe not Texas, but the rest of the country, you know, is only going to push more business and more people to relocate here from both coasts, especially as inflation continues to hit people's pocketbooks, especially those ones that are, you know, living paycheck to paycheck, where that grocery and that gas bill is really impacting them. So you throw on the cost of living on top of that, you can come to Texas and pay a lot less. So I see that continuing to grow, which is going to continue to push Texas and DFW in general. I listened to Mark Goitzer at SIOR or late last year, and he said there might actually be a few states that don't participate in the recession. You know, he named Florida and Texas and other Sunbelt states. I mean, that's the reality, is with so much population growth and corporate relocation to those states that have pro-business environments like Texas, maybe they're not going to participate in the recession as a lot of the other states are going to do out there. So in general, I think we're good. We've also seen a massive shift, and I exodus from China. So from an industrial perspective, China is dying, and if you guys should listen to Peter Zegan, if you've never listened to any of his podcasts, I highly recommend you listen to Peter Zegan. He was just on Joe Rogan recently, and Mexico will be our biggest trading partner over the next 20 to 30 years. And so you think about all that shift from China now headed down to Mexico, and how close that is to how we are here in DFW. Think about all the raw goods that have to go in warehouses, or the finished goods that have to go out of your distribution center. So all in all, extremely bullish long-term on industrial and big lender in Texas. Thanks for everyone for coming today.